What is good, everybody, man? Welcome to the Blue Bloods, man. It's been a while since I've done a live show. I keep telling y'all I'm gonna be a little bit more consistent with it, man. I had to catch up on some sleep after the media day tour we did, man. I was gonna do a live stream right after SWAC Media Day, but listen, the hotel Wi-Fi in Birmingham, I'm just gonna be 100% with you guys, was atrocious, and I barely could even upload the videos that I posted from the event. So, man, listen, I appreciate all y'all tuning in, man. My intro won't working, so we're just gonna get right into it, man. So, make sure to like the stream, make sure to subscribe. We got a lot to talk about tonight, and it's. I'll go through the topics real quick, man. First off, we got to talk about whether freshmen should be able to earn preseason All American awards as a true freshman without ever playing a game. That was a big debate as Travis Hunter was announced at a third team All American on the FCS stats perform All American list. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the predicted order of finishes across the FCS media days. So we got SWAC, ASUN, Southland, man. There's a lot of debate over who should be the favorite in each of these conferences. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit about SWAC Media Day, man. It's been a little while, man. We'll recap my experiences and talk a little bit about some of the things I noticed being there in Birmingham, man. I thought the event overall was great. And really and truly, it was really cool to see how all the different media days differed in their, I would say, functioning and organization, things like that, location, man. Listen, I want to give everyone a shout out. All the SWAC media days picked, I mean, not all the FCS media days picked great locations, in my opinion, man. Listen, the SoCon showed out. Listen, the SoCon put us up in Asheville, North Carolina. It was in the mountains. They had like this big resort looking over the city, man. It was fancy, man. I didn't even feel like I belonged there. And of course, the ASUN was up in the Omni in the new Brave Stadium. Listen, man, it was different. And so shout out to all the FCS conferences for putting on great media days. But first, man, first announcement. Listen, you guys have been asking for this, and so I posted it on our community page yesterday, but I wanted to come on the stream, man, and thank all you guys for this, because without you guys it would not be possible. I was officially selected by Craig Haley to vote in the FCS stats perform top 25 this year, which also means I will be voting for the Buck Buchanan Award, the Walter Payton Award, the Jerry Rice Award for the Freshman of the Year, and the Eddie Robinson Award for the Coach of the Year for FCS Stats Per Format. I get to go to Frisco this year, go cover the award ceremony, man. So everyone who's watched the video, liked the video, subscribed, checked out our website, everything, man, this wouldn't be possible without you guys. So, man, this is really for you guys, man. And I know a lot of people really wanted, someone like me to be on the panel because there's really not a lot of people who I would say pay attention to SWAC football and HBC football in terms of the MEAC and SWAC. And I know me and Scotty talked about that talked about that on the phone not too long ago, man. So definitely appreciate y'all, man. Listen, without Scotty, without Paris, Dumb Boys, Lawrence was one of the big ones for sure. I know, listen, Mr. Campbell's my man. I appreciate all of y'all, but listen, we got to get into it. I know we're going to rub some people the wrong way, man. All of this was great, all the congratulations, but we're going to have to really talk about this. Listen, man, Travis Hunter named an All American on the FCS stats per form list. And, this really sparked a big debate, man. I really want one, people to call in, and two, people to comment what their thoughts on this are, because I'll give y'all my opinion and then I really want to get yours, because one, I do want to say, man, this wasn't a shot at Craig Haley or anyone like that, because I think every platform, every publication has a right to make their own rules and make their own judgments on topics like this. And there's not like 100% right answer on this. But for me personally, in my publication, I will never make a true freshman a preseason All American. And I think all conference might be a different, conversation, but HBCU Sports put out a tweet that said there were two All Americans in that they could find. The first one was North Dakota State defensive back John Santiago, which one, listen, I didn't want to call him out on Twitter, man. I respect Kim Rashad and what they're doing. John Santiago did not play for North Dakota State. He wasn't a defensive back. I mean, he wasn't a defensive back, so that's wrong. John Santiago played for North Dakota and was a running back for North Dakota, not North Dakota State, and he played offense. And he was not a preseason all conference selection, and he was not a preseason All American selection. So that is false. I did the research. John Santiago did not play for North Dakota State. He did not play defensive back, and he was not selected as a preseason All American and or All Conference player. He was named an All American at the end of the season and was on the All Conference team at the end of the season after he had a huge breakout year as a freshman for North Dakota. As a freshman, man, he led the FCS in 100-yard rushing games, was the Big Sky Freshman of the Year, and was a unanimous first-team all-conference selection. But he was not a preseason, so HBCU Sports, that is wrong. And then they put that Ed Oliver was named to the AP, what was named a preseason All-American. That is true. He was named to the AP Sports, but he was a preseason all conference selection and he was on the fourth team. And one of the things is, why are we doing four teams? Are you like four teams for a all conference selection? Man, listen, four teams is ridiculous. For two teams is kind of ridiculous, man. When you go up to past, in my opinion, two teams for all conference, you just might as well hand everybody an all conference award. These conferences don't have enough. Listen, might be enough good players. There are not four teams worth of all conference players. I'm sorry. It's just not. And I think that is ridiculous that they did four teams for an all conference team. I mean, everybody gets an award when you do four teams. I mean, at this point, you're just giving it to the bench warmers who played the year before. That's ridiculous. And for me, I do think freshmen deserve recognitions, and that's why multiple publications at both levels do preseason all freshman teams. Hero Sports has an all freshman team, 247 on three, and me. Listen, I'm going to do an all freshman team before the season. I've been working on that behind the scenes. I just had to get my All American and all conference team set up. But for me, I think you deserve to be on an all freshman team. But here's where the distinction gets me in this. And this is where I saw a lot of people being hypocritical on social media. Is that one here were the arguments I heard. One, and this is what Craig Haley used, and that's fine that he used this for his justification. He said in basketball, true freshmen can be all Americans, and in my argument. My argument is this isn't basketball. In college basketball, the one and done rule has completely changed how the landscape has been shifted in college basketball. There's a possibility that every single All American from the year before goes to the NBA. And there's a chance that all 10 on the first and second team guys who get selected all go to the NBA. So the turnover is much more. So you don't have a lot of returning guys that have earned those all American spots, all conference spots. And so for me, comparing college football and college basketball is just a weird comparison to try to make, because in my opinion, the landscape is completely different. Because when you look at the all-American teams in college football at the FBS or FCS level, there's so many returning players from those All-American teams, and there's so many returning guys from all conference teams that have earned those spots on the field that it's very hard to if at least to me, for people to, in my opinion, to make that distinction for a true freshman. And that's what I'm saying. Listen, and I've said this before, every publication has a right to do everything as long as they're consistent with it. I'm cool with it. Just like I said, I'm going to be consistent by not including freshmen. But this is why, yeah, exactly. Everyone has their criteria, and that's fine. But here's where it gets me, and why this was the reason I spoke out against it is, one, not even an all conference selection. So how are you not even an all conference selection on first or second team, but now you're an All American? Two, there's too many guys who I thought deserved it. You look at BJ Bowler. BJ Bowler absolutely, in my opinion, deserved an All-American. He was on our second team All-American. In my opinion, I believe Benny Sapp should have been in consideration. Caleb Culp for Incarnate Word should have been in consideration. Destin Mack from the Citadel should have been in consideration. All those guys proved it on the field, and so this is where it bothers me is in FCS and FBS, there is a difference because in FBS, you have a lot of guys who are 4 or 5 stars coming back each year. So it's very hard to break into that All American status at the Power 5 FBS level. But at the FCS level, what happens to, in my opinion, is you got Travis Hunter comes in first ever 5 star in the history of FCS. He gets this nod, in my opinion, those guys who started out as 0 stars, 1, 2, 3 stars, who didn't come in with the hype, that have built their entire careers to this moment and are going into junior and senior years, their last chance to earn this honor, just lost out to a guy who hasn't even put on a helmet. That to me rubs me the wrong way because, yes, preseason might not mean anything to the fan. You know what I mean? It might not mean anything to you personally as a fan, but to the players that have went out there and sweat and went to these 5 a.m. workouts and fought their butts off as overlooked recruits at the FCS level to get to that spot and be in position to receive an All-American nod. That's disrespectful to put a true freshman who hasn't even played over those guys because they, in my opinion, earned it more than he did on the field right now. And it's not saying that Travis isn't going to be good. Travis isn't going to be one of the greatest players to ever suit up in the FCS. I'm not saying any of that. He could be all those things and he could be a postseason All-American. That's fine, whatever. But for me, you just totally overlooked everybody. I mean, listen, for Travis Hunter to be an All-American and Shador not being All-American, Aubrey Miller not being All-American, Cam not being All-American, Dejon Warren being All-American. Listen, man, to me, I have a problem with it, and I'm going to be consistent on the fact that I do have a problem with it because listen, I had so many parents and players that reached out to me and was like, man, listen, I thought I thought X, Y, and Z, like, listen, I was this selection and I was in line for this All-American thing. I was an honorable mention last year and now I didn't even get it. So for me, I personally think that there were some misses, but the biggest thing for me is you took it away from somebody who, in my opinion, earned it on the field, and it could have been their potentially last
There is
chance to
one other
earn that.
participant in the
So
conference.
that's where I stand on it, man. I want y'all to let me know in the chat what you guys think, because for me, I can't say that he deserved it right now. And listen, he could be great, and I get it. You might not care about preseason All-Americans, but listen, I promise you, those players do, and those schools do, especially the smaller ones that don't get a lot of chances to have All-Americans. So that's going to be that's going to be my soapbox on that one. Let's see. To be fair, those guys, none of those guys have hype like Travis preseason hype awards. I get it. I get why Craig Haley named him preseason All American, but it's fine. But listen, let's move on here real quick. Preseason predictions across the board, man, for FCS conferences. Man, we're going to get to the SWAC MEAC toward the end. We're going to start with the ASUN, just kind of briefly touch on these. Kennesaw State was picked by the coaches to win the ASUN. And listen, I have no complaints here. Listen, in my opinion, this is a 2-horse race. Kennesaw State, Eastern Kentucky, I think are going to be the two teams that really challenge for this. Central Arkansas and Jacksonville State had too much turnover. Austin P and North Alabama just aren't there yet, in my opinion. Kennesaw State is going to run away with the ASUN, in my opinion. I think that Eastern Kentucky game might be the only one that could slip them up, but Kennesaw State is going to be a problem in the ASUN. I got zero problem with this at all. SoCon here, Chattanooga voted preseason favorites by the media, 18 first place votes. Defending champions ETSU got 7. Mercer with 5 votes, tied for second. Listen, I don't have a problem with Chattanooga. I think they're the best team. That I had them 13th in my top 25 preseason poll. I think that team's loaded. Devontae Maxwell is an absolute stud. I lean forward at the running back spot is going to be a problem. They have a really, really good linebacking core too. And also the secondary looks like it's much improved. ETSU is a big question mark. Tyler Riddell comes back at the quarterback spot, but always replacing Quay Holmes is going to be interesting, even though Jacob Sailors, who was a backup running back last year and had over 1,100 rushing yards, was named the SoCon preseason player of the year. On the offensive side of the ball, I think the interesting one is Mercer for me. In my opinion, Mercer is an overlooked team. They were extremely young last season, but losing their star running back Davis to an undisclosed off the field matter. It sounded like it was his decision, like he had a family issue or something, but I'm not sure, man. But he had a huge season last year in his sophomore season, ran for almost 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns. That's going to be a big loss. But in terms of their defense, man, I think it's going to be one of the more impressive ones in the SoCon. But ETSU and Mercer have a little bit of question marks. Furman's interesting, but the rest of them, man, I think they're going to be fighting for those, 4 through 9 positions. I think an interesting one is Western Carolina. They have the old Valdosta State coach that came in. I think, man, he's really building a contender. He had the highest rated recruiting class in Western Carolina history last year, and also had the #1 class in the SoCon. So I think Western Carolina is a team you're going to want to watch for as well. CAA, listen, the big news. I know a lot of people wanted to talk about this. Hampton voted last in their first year in the CAA, only with 31 total points. They more than double are away from UAlbany in that 12 spot. Villanova is voted the preseason favorite, 16 first place votes. Delaware in second with 7. Rhode Island, Richmond, William and Mary rounding out that top 5. Listen, I don't mind Villanova being one. In my opinion, Delaware wins this conference. I love what Delaware is bringing back. Their quarterback comes back from injury. And on top of that, man, Kedrick Whitehead is one of my favorite defensive players. They have 2 all-conference selections on the defensive line. And Jalen Witcher coming in at wide receiver is going to be a problem for Presbyterian. Had over 1,000 yards receiving as a true freshman last year. One of the top receivers in the country, in my opinion. Now, the one gripe I have is I don't think Monmouth finishes 10th. I know it's their first year in the conference, and a lot of the voters really didn't know where to put them. Listen, Monmouth, in my opinion, is going to finish no less than 6th. And I would not be surprised if Monmouth makes a run into that top 3. I know it's their first year in the conference. I love Tony Muskett. Jawan Fari was an all-conference selection at the running back spot. Daquan Grimes comes back from injury. He's a 2-time first-team all-conference in the Big South. And in the secondary, Eddie Morales also comes back for his 5th and final season. I love what Monmouth has, and I think they're really getting overlooked because it's their first year in the conference. The MEAC here, man. I don't have any problem with the order. And I know this is probably going to be one a lot of people want to talk about, but South Carolina State gets 8 first place votes. They're first. North Carolina Central in second. Norfolk, Delaware State with Howard and Morgan State rounding out the top, the bottom of the pack there. But South Carolina State was going to be voted first. I have no problem with that. Now, the one question mark I do have is Norfolk State. Uh, I really don't know where to put them, in my opinion, because they do lose a quarterback in Carter, and that's always a really tough position to replace. Now they did land Jalen Adams from the Citadel, but Delaware State, man, listen, talking to the coaches at MEAC Media Day and kind of getting the sense of what the media I met there thought about the conference. I really, really do think that Delaware State is going to shock some people, man. That defense is on point. They've returned all 11 players from last season, including Asias Guthrie at the defensive back spot, who potentially could be one of the best defensive players in the MEAC this upcoming season. Isaiah Williams on the defensive line is a problem as well. And Jared Lewis at quarterback, listen, I I really like him, and he's extremely athletic, and a lot of people think that he could be the next Carter in that conference. And so Delaware State and Norfolk, I wouldn't mind if you switch. And I really do think Norfolk is going to take a step back. Now, listen, their running back spot with JJ Davis is on point. But man, I don't know if I really just don't think Norfolk's going to compete for the title this year. I really can't see it in my opinion. And North Carolina Central is my dark horse for everything. Uh, I think they have a really, really good shot to potentially upset South Carolina State and win this conference. And I think they have the best quarterback in the conference in Davis Richards or Richard. I think Brendan Codrington is one of the best return specialists in the country. And that offensive line was young last year, and they returned a lot of good pieces. Corey Bullock, in my opinion, is one of the top HBCU offensive linemen right now, and they've returned most of their offensive production overall. So I really like North Carolina Central, and I was talking about this with Scotty on the phone. Their coach, I don't know if you guys will know what I mean by that, but I don't know if you guys have ever talked to someone and their energy is just infectious, where it draws you in, and like they could sell ice to an Eskimo, and that is what Trey Oliver could do in the conversation I had with him. I mean, I left that conversation with him in that interview really, really saying, man, am I going to pick North Carolina Central to win this conference? He spoke with so much confidence and so much bravado in his team. I love what North Carolina Central can potentially do in the MEAC this year. I think it's coming to come down to them and South Carolina State. Delaware State's probably going to fall somewhere in that 3 spot, but Morgan State, I saw a few comments. Will Morgan really be last? Maybe this year, Larry, but for me, I think Morgan has the potential to maybe pull some upsets this year, but I think next year is really where you're going to see Damon Wilson get his recruiting going, get his talent in there. Because right now he's kind of working with what was left over at Morgan, which wasn't terrible, but I think they're going to be last this year at least, Larry. But listen, I agree with Scotty and what a lot of other people are saying. Damon Wilson can recruit at one of the highest levels in that state. And I think what you saw him do at Bowie State could be replicated at Morgan. So, listen, Morgan, I think is probably 2 years away from really and truly competing for the MEAC. But do not be surprised if they pull off an upset or two throughout this season. Now, the Big Sky, won't spend too much time on this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I thought Montana easily was going to win this. I had them number 3 in my preseason top 25 for the FCS. Now, second and third place are interesting. You've had Sacramento State and Montana State. Sac State has won 2 straight Big Sky titles, but has really fallen in terms of playoff success right now. But I want to tell you, man, watch out for Weber State, man. They won 4 straight Big Sky titles not too long back. But I think it's a 3-team race. Montana State, and Sac State are probably going to be your team. Eastern Washington, I think, is going to face too much of they're probably going to have too much to overcome in terms of losing Eric Barrier and some of the pieces they lost. Now, this could be a year. I know Eastern Washington is known for offense. Their defense really and truly could surprise some people. They have a lot of good defensive linemen. That secondary looks like it's improved. They just landed a 4-star from Washington State. I think his name's Alphonse or Alfonsi, something like that. I think I think Eastern Washington's defense could be the reason they potentially don't fall too far. Now, UC Davis at 5 is interesting. I would like to see more from them. I think they were a young team last year, but a lot of unknowns there. And in terms of Northern Arizona, too, RJ Martinez at the quarterback spot is going to be a really, really interesting player. I had him as a preseason all conference selection for the Big Sky at quarterback. I love his game. He can do it all with his arm, with his feet, and I think he's going to be a dynamic guy that's going to be really, really hard to deal with in some of those big games. But Montana, Sac State, and Montana State are going to compete for that conference. But listen, man, Montana is loaded from top to bottom. They return a running back that had like 26 rushing touchdowns in 2019. He missed last season due to an injury he suffered in the spring. He averages like 8 yards a carry for his career. Listen, Montana, in my opinion, would be my pick right now to win the Big Sky. Big South, listen, this was a big one too. North Carolina A&T, um, let's see. Oh yeah, did Norfolk lose a lot of guys because they were supposed to win the MEAC last year? I believe so. That they had a little bit of turnover in the transfer portal, Mr. Campbell. It also could be some off the field stuff. I know there was that report of like sexual assault or something like that off the field. I know Scotty did a show on that, and then you have the housing situation potentially. I don't know how much that off the field stuff is playing into it, but they didn't have a lot of staff turnover. But in terms of Odom's potentially bringing in some players he wanted and kind of filtering out the players he doesn't. could be the reason you saw so much turnover. But I'm going to be interested in Norfolk, man. They're a big question mark for me this year. Now, North Carolina A&T, 6 first place votes. Campbell in second with 2. Charleston Southern, Gardner Webb, Bryant, and Robert Morris round out that conference. Now, for me, I don't think Bryant finishes 5th. I think Bryant is going to be better than that. They're coming over from the NEC this year. This will be their first year in the Big South. And listen, okay, I do think Campbell and North Carolina A&T are the top 2 teams. Again, like I said with Trey Oliver, talking to Mike Minter, man, we did our interview. It was like a 7-minute interview that you can find on our channel. We talked for probably 20 minutes off camera about just the recruiting process, some players on his team, how he's feeling, his staff. Listen, all I can say is Mike Minter thinks you guys are sleeping on him, and he said that he's going to wake some people up. He said, listen, I want them to think we're just the Campbell of the past. He said, I understand why people don't trust us because of our record and what's happened in the past. But he said, listen, this is a different team. He said, we finally got a staff in here that I like, finally got some players that can play. Listen, Campbell is going to be a problem, and it's going to come down to North Carolina A&T and Campbell. And I agree with this comment here. Let's see, where did it go? Yes, chance that he has to win the Big South. North Carolina A&T has to win the Big South. If you do not win the Big South this year, the CAA is going to be absolute hell for North Carolina A&T. This is the year where they have a returning quarterback. Their offensive line is pretty good this year, should take a large step forward. Their defense has some big time contributors. You look at Jacob Roberts and some other guys coming in there. Listen, this is the year, but Sam Washington really spoke champ and everyone about the secondary. He said last season he thought North Carolina A&T as little as they ran the ball, or I would say as bad as they ran the ball with Jermaine Martin dealing with some injuries and that offensive line didn't do well. He said that the secondary cost them more games than anything. He said the secondary, I mean, he didn't, mince any words. He said the secondary was atrocious. He said the secondary was trash pretty much. And he said that was the main focus of the staff this year, was to recruit more guys to the secondary, develop those guys that are already there. They made a change at the defensive back coach spot, and he said that he feels a lot more comfortable with that secondary going into 2022. So I think when you look at A&T, you're going to see you're going to have to see the secondary develop. The offensive line is going to have to take a small step forward. And then, of course, replacing Jermaine Martin is not easy. And listen, I texted Scotty this, and this is some insider stuff. Only you guys are knowing it right now on this show. Before Media Day started, I was sitting in a room with all the player representatives from these respective schools, and they talked about Jermaine Martin and the guarantee for 2,000 yards and how he was kind of talking down on the Big South. And he said, listen, there were some players, not going to say who, that said that they felt like it was a mission to make sure Jermaine Martin got dominated last season. And I think that's why you saw so many teams crack down on that run game. And they said he came in talking too much crap, and they had to shut it down. And so, listen, Jermaine Martin rubbed a lot of the conference the wrong way, and a lot of those teams wanted to make an emphasis that North Carolina A&T wasn't going to come into this conference and run like they did in the MEAC. And the like one player even said, he was like, "This ain't the MEAC." He was like, "We play big boy football here." And listen, they were very, very vocal that Jermaine Martin came in a little bit too confident. But listen, I think it's Campbell, A&T. Bryant, though, is a team I really, really like, though. They're coming in from the NEC. Don't be surprised if they make a run into that top 3 potentially. Now, the Missouri Valley, this came out today. So this is pretty new. And North Dakota State, 39 first place votes. Shocker. South Dakota State, 2 first place votes, and it's everybody else. I think the top 3 teams were a given. North Dakota State was number 1 in my preseason top 25. South Dakota State was number 2. Not a surprise there. Missouri State was 5th in my rankings. And listen, I think that's easy 1, 2, 3. Southern Illinois is going to be interesting. I really do want to see how Youngstown State comes out. They did a lot of work in the portal. this offseason. I really hope to see Youngstown State kind of reestablish their dominance, one of the blue blood programs of the FCS. And I would, in my opinion, love to see Youngstown State kind of make some noise this year. I think South Dakota is another team you potentially could look out for. I think South Dakota and Northern Iowa are just those teams that you always see make the playoffs with 6, 7 wins, and then they find a way to make a big upset or give some people some headaches. And I think that's what you're going to get this year. But easy here. It's North Dakota State, South Dakota State, and it's everybody else. And let me just say, and I agree with Paris here. South Dakota State is looking for 3 in a row over North Dakota State. They're on a 2-game win streak right now over North Dakota State, and they get North Dakota State coming in this year. If they win 3 in a row, man, that the pressure is going to be on in the playoffs because they keep beating North Dakota State in the regular season, but then don't make it far enough to face North Dakota State in the playoffs. In the spring they made it to the championship win against Sam Houston and really choked that game away. But Mark Gronkowski comes back fully healthy. Isaiah Davis comes back fully healthy, who is both of those guys are absolute studs. The receiver spot with Janke is loaded. The defense, man, has like 8 or 9 all conference selections. Listen, South Dakota State, if you're going to get North Dakota State and get that national championship, their first one ever, by the way, South Dakota State has never won a national title. This is the year they potentially could do it. That team is loaded. They had the most first team all conference selections in the MVFC today as well. So that's something to look for as well. Let's see. And then the Southland, I think this was a given to Southeastern Louisiana pick first. Incarnate Word kind of threw a wrench when they decided to come back. They were second. Nichols, McNeese, Northwestern State, Texas A&M Commerce, man, coming up from D2, doesn't get voted last, man. I thought that was interesting. I loved Coach Bailiff, talking to him at Southland Media Day, man. He was very vocal. I asked Coach Bailiff for Texas A&M Commerce on how he projects to bring that D2 success up to the Southland, and he just said, "I don't know if we can." He said, "I know we're a good Lone Star Conference D2 team." He said, "I don't know where we rank in the Southland." He said, "We'll find out." But that's a team that won the 2017 D2 title, if I remember right, and they made a few playoff runs. Man, I really liked Texas A&M Commerce. D Walker was someone I really enjoyed talking to, a linebacker for them. So look out for them. And then McNeese, man. McNeese is going to be interesting. They hired Gary Goff this offseason, a Valdosta State head coach. He had a 22-3 record at Valdosta State, got them to the national championship. Listen, Gary Goff can recruit. I think going to the state of Louisiana with all that talent could be dangerous if he can get McNeese rolling. That quarterback spot's going to be interesting. They added the kid from Jackson State. I'm blanking on his name, but I want to say it's like Elijah or something like that. Added him at the wide receiver spot. They already have their leading wide receiver coming back. If they can get a quarterback, McNeese could be interesting moving forward. But Lindsey Scott steps in for Cameron Ward and Incarnate Word. I love head coach GJ Kinney. I got to talk to him as well. Listen, man, that is a Texas dude. He gets to come back to yes. Allah Brown, my bad, man. I was blanking on his name. But listen, Southeastern also replaces the quarterback. It looks like it's probably going to be Cephas Johnson from Mobile, Alabama. Listen, man, I saw him play at South. The kid is extremely athletic, but it's going to come down to that Southeastern and Incarnate Word game. I think that's going to be an interesting race, but right now I would lean with Southeastern because of their defense. And then this is the one I know everyone's been waiting to see, the SWAC, man. And Jackson State, of course, voted to win the East. Southern voted to win the West. FAMU in second, A&M in third, Alabama State 4, Bethune-Cookman, Mississippi Valley State, while Southern's followed by Alcorn, Prairie View, Grambling, UAPB, and Texas Southern. And I know a lot was made. And in my opinion, I do not see either of those 6th-place teams finishing there. Just in my opinion, I was surprised how man, the fact that Valley was that far behind Bethune-Cookman really surprised me. And I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's because they're very high on the other teams. Maybe they're looking at Bethune-Cookman saying they got Jalen Jones, they got Kamari Everett, their defense is pretty good. They have Hill Robinson at the cornerback spot. maybe they're just that high on Alabama State with Demetrius Davis coming in at quarterback and Earshot coming back. I just don't know, man. I really would like for the voters to kind of speak up on that. And in case you guys wanted to know, the people who supposedly vote on this committee are the SIDs and coaches in the SWAC. So all the SIDs for the SWAC schools and all the coaches are the ones that supposedly voted for this, or at least that's what I was told at SWAC Media Day. And so it looks like they're not very high on Valley or Texas Southern. And I got to talk to Dancy, head coach Dancy, at SWAC Media Day after this came out. It was weird because I did some interviews before this came out, and then I did some interviews after this came out. And Dancy was extremely, extremely pissed about this. And I think you could tell he has a chip on his shoulder. And I just listen, I will be shocked if Valley finishes last. Now, a tangent real quick. I do want to give a shout out to head coach Dancy. I don't know if anyone's done a video on it or released an article. I'm probably going to do an article probably sometime this week, hopefully tomorrow on it. Dancy was selected to the NFL, I believe, fellowship or minority fellowship, the same thing that KJ Black was selected to. Dancy is going to be going to coach for the Jaguars throughout training camp. He'll be coaching running backs and getting some really great experience. And I think with his career trajectory and how great of a coach he is, I think this is a great opportunity for Dancy, man. And I don't think there really and truly there was a better coach to get that opportunity. And so, man, shout out to Coach Dancy, man. I'm expecting him to go down to Jacksonville and kill it. And I'm going to be interested to see how that works with his camp, because if he's down with the Jaguars, who's really going to be there with Valley? We'll kind of see how that works. But I'm really glad he got that opportunity, man. And shout out to Coach Dancy. But Texas Southern, is there anything to say about this, man? You got Andrew Body at the quarterback spot, man. And quarterback's the biggest thing, in my opinion, that you're gonna have. Yeah, I will be shocked if Texas Southern finishes sixth. Listen, I will come on this show and apologize to everyone. Apologize. I will admit I have zero football knowledge. I will be mind blown if Texas Southern finishes last in that division. I mean, right now, I like Texas Southern more than UAPB as a team, Prairie View as a team. I really and truly, I would put them on par with Grambling right now, but with all the unknowns in terms of their team right now coming in with the first year head coach and Hugh Jackson, I just I don't see how you could say Texas Southern is last in this division. I don't. I cannot see it, man. It makes zero sense to me on how this has happened, in my opinion. And I saw some people saying that Southern had a little bit of problem with Southern, being voted favorites. I like Southern as the favorite in the West right now. I know they do have a first year head coach, but when you look at their additions out of the transfer portal, I think a lot of them are proven compared to some of the other teams in that division. I love Bashawn McCray at quarterback. I think he's probably going to win the job. But when you look, they're already returning Kobe Dillon at running back, so we know what it is there. They're returning some really strong offensive linemen, Brian Williams and oh man, I cannot believe I'm blanking on his name. It's Brian Williams and somebody. Dallas Black, that's who it is. The offensive line is on point for Southern already. And also, man, that secondary is going to be absolutely disgusting. Let me just say this. If you're talking ranking secondaries, it starts with Jackson State and it goes straight to Southern in terms of in terms of overall depth and talent at the defensive back spot, and then on the others, and then of course you go to probably FAMU at that point. But when you look at the all conference selections they got from the D2 and other FCS programs and FBS talent from Troy, I'm blanking on the kid's name. That defense is going to be a problem. And of course you got Dumas, man. Jason Dumas, in my opinion, right now in the SWAC, and I listen, this is not taking anything away from Isaiah Land. This is not taking away from anything from Nugget or any other defensive player, Aubrey. Jason Dumas is the most dominant, I didn't say talented, dominant player in the SWAC right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It's not even a debate. Well, when you look at what he did at Prairie View with nobody next to him, unless you're a Prairie View fan, you couldn't name another player on that defensive line from Prairie View last season that you would have to game plan for because there wasn't anybody really and truly over at Prairie View that you had to game plan for. I mean, Jason Dumas was it, and he was facing double and triple teams week after week and bullying offensive linemen. And really, when you look at that Jackson State game, man, he kept PV in that game. I know Shador didn't have his best game, and it was because Jason Dumas was in his face every single play. The center guard could not handle Dumas, and he did it game after game. And listen, I think Jason Dumas, now that you pair him up with Jordan Lewis, and you also pair him up with some of the people that they have on the edge on the other side. Listen, man, you are not just going to be able to double Jason Dumas all game. You're going to have to figure out is pick your poison. You got a Buck Buchanan, a winner on the edge, and you got a defensive tackle who's a 3-time all SWAC selection and an FCS All-American. It's going to be a problem, man, and I'm excited to see it. Alcorn is a big question mark for me. Um, you know, listen, I think replacing Felix Harper is a huge, huge task. And I think this goes along with Alabama A&M too. When you replace a all-time great quarterback in your program's history, there's always going to be growing pains, especially if you don't have a groomed replacement. And I think when you look at both of those teams with Quincy Casey and with the Allen kid from Louisiana Tech, those guys haven't been in the program that long. And so you don't have like a groom replacement really coming in as like a guarantee. And so I think Alcorn goes through some growing pains. And when you look at that second place vote, it's because they have Fred McNair, and he has earned the respect that we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you're Fred McNair and you've done this at the biggest level. And their offense and defensive line needed some size. They went out and got that. We'll see how they gel together because we saw with Jackson State, you can get a lot of size, but you got to have chemistry, and that's going to be the question: is how the line of scrimmage for Alcorn looks and how they develop throughout the season. So I think Alcorn is going to be a big question mark, but just because of McNair, I don't mind that second place voting. Prairie View should not have been third, and I want to talk to the 5 people who voted them number 1. Yes, those things in the parentheses are first place votes. Who are the 5 people that voted for Prairie View number 1? Because I need to talk to all 5 of them and ask. I need a film breakdown. I need a roster breakdown. What about Prairie View right now with a first-year head coach and losing all their top talent? I mean, there's an argument they lost like their top 6 players from last season. At the quarterback spot on defense, I need to know the 5 people who voted Prairie View number 1, because what gets me about this is it really just looks like Prairie View was just voted first because they won last year. And so I hate voters like that are like, you won the national championship or you won the division last year. We're just going to vote you first just because. It's like, yeah, there's no evidence in the world that suggests that Prairie View should have a first place vote. And we're just going to leave it at that. Grambling's a big unknown. I still will probably put them above Prairie View. I mean, even with Hugh Jackson coming in, I think when you look at the defense for Grambling, that's going to be the biggest thing, man, is if that defense continues to play how they did last season, man, this team could be interesting to watch. Now, the offensive side of the ball has a lot of developing to do, and they were last in the SWAC in passing offense last year. They had more interceptions than touchdowns through the air last season at the quarterback spot for a team. Like, the entire team threw more interceptions than they did touchdown passes. That cannot happen. I think Holloway and some of those quarterbacks they brought in were great. I think the Chance Amy kid from Syracuse is going to be someone to watch. I've heard from some people that I know in the program that that kid is balling out, and there's a good chance that he starts. The North Texas kid has a lot of talent as well. So Grambling has a lot of question marks, but they have a lot of talent. The running back from Nebraska, man, listen, is going to be a problem. Maurice Washington is going to be one of the top running backs, in my opinion, to watch coming in. I think him and then Savion Wilkerson from Delaware State to Jackson State are going to be the 2 incoming running backs that I'm extremely excited to see how they fit into their scheme. So those 2 guys are someone to watch. And then in the East, man, I think Jackson State. Listen, put your hands up in the chat if you were surprised Jackson State was voted first. I was surprised to see that FAM got 7 first place votes. I really was. I really just because of the media presence and because of the hype behind their name and how and I would say how they already went undefeated in the SWAC last season. I was really surprised that Jackson State didn't get more first place votes. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't mind it. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I really did expect Jackson State to really run away with this one, and they really didn't. I mean, they only 8 points above FAMU. And so I think there's a lot of people looking at Willie Simmons and looking at the fact that they didn't play football for an entire season, only lost that game by 1 point. And I think they're putting a lot of stock into Willie Simmons making that adjustment and bringing in some more talent. Now, for them, the safety spot is going to be a big one. I think the linebacker spot as well. I know they brought in Isaiah Major from the JUCO level, and then at the safety spot they brought in Jordan Moore, and they brought in a kid from Iowa State. I think it's Kamani King or something like that. Those 2 guys look like they have a lot of potential, but when you're replacing, when you're replacing a guy like Marquise Bell and even Antoine Collier, who went and won the MVP at, at, what's it called? The HBCU Legacy Bowl. Uh, listen, I don't know. It's going to be tough. And so on the offensive side, luckily they have a guy who's coming in to replace Bishop Bonnet and Terrell Jennings. He was already on the team, had some moments where he really took over games in replace of Bishop Bonnet at times when they needed to give him a break. So I think Terrell Jennings is going to be an easy running back one. They added some depth through the transfer portal, and we know what the wide receiver spot is. You still got Shareed, you still got Xavier Smith. The wide receivers are going to be fine at FAMU. I'm not going to be worried about them too much. The tight end spot, they return all their guys from last year, their top guys. Kamari Young is going to be somebody I'm really excited, and I'm hoping the new offensive coordinator uses him more. I think with his size and his red zone threat ability, I really do think that he could be special. I know he had a little bit of a breakout against Southern. I'm pretty sure he scored that first touchdown in the red zone, and they need to use him more like that. But the offensive line is going to be big. They got some big pieces to replace Jay Jackson Williams, Keenan Forbes, but overall, I think FAMU it's going to probably come down to FAMU and Jackson State for that division. I've already kind of talked about Alabama A&M. Listen, they need some luck. I'll be completely honest, and the reason I say that is because you hear some coaches talk about this is that if you overuse the transfer portal, it could go really well for you, which is what we saw with Jackson State. I think it was a very rare occurrence that you saw Jackson State bring in as many transfers and new guys as they did, and it work immediately and it click as soon as they hit the field. There's also the flip side possibility of that chemistry not being there, and it really just seems like you got a bunch of pieces that don't fit together, and that's what a lot of coaches worry about, and that's why a lot of FCS coaches still prefer to build off the high school recruiting trail and developing players, the North Dakota State model or someone like that. The defense is going to have to gel because there were too many times that where that defense wasn't communicating, they didn't have that aggression, and they didn't have that go-to pass rusher. So for me, when I look at the defense, one, you have to have somebody like an Isaiah Land, like a Dumas, like a Jordan Lewis that can go get the quarterback when you need him to. In big moments, teams who can't get pressure on the quarterback are going to get picked apart. And so I think Alabama A&M has to have an edge rusher really step up and be the guy to go get the quarterback. At the linebacker spot, they brought in some promising guys, but I don't think the linebacker spot was arguably their biggest need. The secondary, though, man, I still talk about this to this day, man. When Josh Lanier in the slot on the right side of the field, the home side, I remember I was sitting right there in the stands. He runs across the formation, and not a single player for Alabama A&M even moves his feet, and he's wide open. I don't understand how that happens at the D1 level. The fact that you have a guy come in motion and nobody moves. To this day, I don't understand how that happened. And so the secondary's got to get better, man. And they lost Troutman, and I believe they lost another guy to the transfer portal, but they brought in, I believe, 2 4-star guys at corner that have that have some height, that have some link to them, and potentially could bring a lot of athleticism to the back end of that defense. But communication and chemistry are going to be the most important things in terms of Alabama A&M. in my opinion, for success. And then Alabama State is an interesting one. I kind of put them in that unknown category. um, yeah, they hired a new DC. I don't remember his name, but they did bring in a new DC, new defensive coordinator. So they will be running a new scheme, and I'm going to be interested to see what that looks like and how pieces are going to fit. Now, Alabama State's so interesting, man, because I think they have one of the highest ceilings in the division, but also potentially one of the lowest floors if things don't click right. And when you look at the offense, they do return Ja'Cory Merritt at the running back spot, who I really, really like. And then at the wide receiver spot, they brought in a lot of pieces to kind of replace some guys that they lost this offseason. And they brought in a lot of guys with some size, and they brought in a few slot guys that have a little bit of speed on them. And so I'm going to be interested to see how, in my opinion, how they utilize it, because over the last few watching SWAC football, they just didn't have any versatility in their offensive play calling. It was either Ezra Gray went wild, or you would hope Ryan Nettles had a okay game. Like they didn't have any versatility. They didn't have any levels or depth to their offense. And so I'm going to be interested to see if they can get that going into this season, because if you don't have any versatility, if you don't have any depth, and I would say creativeness to your offense, man, and the SWAC with the talent and the level of defense that's played in this conference, I don't see how you're going to be able to compete. And so for me, I'm good. I don't know about Alabama State in terms of that, but listen, Davis at quarterback is the truth. I'll just say that he is absolutely the truth at quarterback. Listen, I'm an Auburn guy. I'm an Auburn guy. I saw him at Auburn. I thought he should have been Auburn starting quarterback two years ago as a true freshman. I think he's going to be that good, and as long as they just put the ball in his hands and let him go make plays, that offense could experience a little bit of a revitalization that they've been needing. I think he can do it with his feet, he can do it with his arms, as long as he can build the chemistry with the offensive line and his wide receivers. I'm going to be interested to see. Their offensive line's fine, Paris. The O line, really and truly, for Alabama State was not a big problem last year. They have if I'm not mistaken, I believe Austin was an all conference selection. I'll have to look. I think it's Robert Alston, but in my opinion, the offensive line is not a huge problem. And the defense, man, I think the defense has always been good for Alabama State, and they do. I believe they just hired a new defensive coordinator after Sewell left. But when you got Earshot Davis, you got Bubba, and you got some guys on the defensive line who are coming back, I'll be surprised if Alabama State's defense takes a large step back. Now, the one question is, I think they have to get a guy like I was just talking about with Alabama A&M that can go get the quarterback. They've been really strong at the defensive tackle spot, which is why I think their run defense has been really good these past few seasons. But they haven't done a good job outside of design blitzes getting to the quarterback. And I think what makes good defenses really reach that elite level, when you look at FAMU, when you look at Jackson State, when you look at those top defenses in the conference and even the country, when you look at a North Dakota State, when you look at a Jackson State, a FAMU, a Kennesaw State, or whoever, they can get pressure on the quarterback with four guys. And that is special. When you can get to the quarterback with four guys, it opens up your defensive scheme to do so much more, and it unlocks so many more schemes and designs and coverage possibilities that you can run on the back end, because you're not worried about bringing a linebacker down. You're not worried about bringing a safety in the box. You're not worried about, you know, leaving your DB potential on the island against a really good wide receiver. If you can get pressure with four and allow those other guys on the defense to go do other jobs and fill in other roles, in my opinion, it really helps the defensive coordinator scheme up something against good teams. And I think that's what you saw with Jackson State through most of the season. Is they didn't have to bring a lot of blitzes if they didn't want to. All they had to do was allow James Houston to go get the quarterback, allow Antoine Owens to get pressure up the middle or off the edge when he played that position. And when they schemed for James Houston, they forgot about Niles Gaddy, and he was able to get upfield and get to the quarterback. Getting pressure with four guys really unlocks the defense. Same with FAMU and Isaiah Land, Savion, and a lot of those guys they had last year, General Hunt. That's what makes defenses elite. Elite defenses always can get pressure on the quarterback with four guys. And so that's something I think a lot of these other SWAC teams have to look at and have to figure out who is that guy that they can count on to get pressure. Now, Bethune, I think, is an interesting one as well. I think it's all about Jalen Jones's development, man. If Jalen Jones comes in and he's a guy who goes and makes plays with his legs and doesn't turn the ball over and improves his accuracy a little bit, Bethune could be a problem as well. Kamari Everett, in my opinion, is the best tight end in FCS football. I know Tucker Kraft has a good argument from South Dakota State as well, but I think Kamari Everett, in terms of what he does in the receiving aspect of his game and being able to go play pretty much a glorified wide receiver spot, about that Kyle Pitts type role. I I think, in my opinion, Kamari Everett, that's what gives him an advantage. And so I like Bethune Cookman, but the defense has a few question marks in the front seven for me. They lose their top linebacker, they lose some of their top edge rushers. And so for me, I want to see how they replace those guys up in that front seven. And so that would kind of be my breakdown of the conference. I already talked about Valley to start off. It's all about the quarterback. Jamari Jones, I believe is his name, from JUCO. If he develops, he's going to be somebody that I think could be really good. And we'll just kind of go right into it as well on SWAC Media Day. I know there was a lot of criticism and things like that, and that's all fair. The one thing I would say that I would like to see, being going to 7 media days in 11 days, really kind of show me like the full spectrum of what media day could be. And the one thing I wish the SWAC would have done is separate the team tables from like the main interview room, because well, the way it was set up, I don't know if you guys saw it on camera, is there was the main stage and then all the tables were like down the side of the main room. And so Alabama A&M, Alabama State, PV, and I think it was Grambling. All those tables were so close to the main stage that if they were recording, you couldn't even get those interviews. Like, I had an interview with the Alabama State table that I couldn't even post because the audio was just like destroyed. And so I would like to see them kind of separated. I know the SoCon, the MEAC, and some of these other conferences, they had separate rooms. So they had like the media room where like all the players and everyone stood, so you can go get your interviews, make Radio Row and all that kind of stuff. And then they had the main broadcast in another room. And so it allowed the noise to kind of like disperse itself, instead of everything just kind of like bunched up and like not very organized. So I think organization was my biggest thing, is that I don't think the SWAC one was super organized. There was a media room, but it was so full with people, man. There were like tables where like I had my laptop and things set up, but then you had the Black College Sports Network, you had HBCU Game Day in that corner, you had Roland Martin, you had HBCU Go Plus or something like that. Then in the back you had another news organization. So like there wasn't even room to put the teams in. So I would, with the amount of media that came to SWAC Media Day, listen, you got to expand it to 3 rooms, because I think there were so many people. And I've talked to some other media that even lost their interviews just because it was so chaotic and so hectic that it was really hard to separate the audio. And I think even with good mics, like I got a really nice mic for my camera, and I know some other people had the handheld mics, and you could still see kind of the chaos. And I think when you look at my interviews from different media days, you could tell the ones that were a little bit more chaotic, because you see people walking in and out, walking in the back, walking around, when some of the more organized ones are kind of me and that person, and like it's just us there. And so I think spreading it out a little bit will be big, and I think that's something that the SWAC can do moving forward. But like I agree with you guys, I don't know if they expected that much media presence. I mean, when I say there was so much more media presence at the SWAC compared to most other FCS conferences, that I mean it was intense, man. Like the SWAC was the second media day I went to. I went to the Southland on Wednesday, and man, I'm telling you, it was like 4 or 5 times the amount of media was at SWAC Media Day compared to the Southland. Like in the media room for the Southland, it was me, an ESPN radio station, and like 4 or 5 news stations in the media room. And in the SWAC, I just described the media room and just the main one, and that's not even talking about all the ones that were just walking around and there to get single. Say like the media presence at the SWAC was so great that like I understand that they probably ran out of room or potentially didn't have the ability to kind of spread that out. But I think everybody at my Wi-Fi just went out. Oh, well, we're back, I think. But having everyone spread out and allow people to get those interviews and get those one-on-one interviews are big. I think that that will be a huge thing moving forward. And also, for the other FCS conferences too. I mean, I would like to see more national media there. I think with the thing I was surprised about is the, the fact that there were not an there like Hero Sports weren't there, FCS Stats wasn't there. I know Sam Herder and then went to like the Big Sky, and so maybe it was just you know maybe it's just location. Like for me, I could like I so just the Blue Bloods, the organization, we got approved for Big Sky, we got approved for CAA, MVFC, all the ones that were remote to over Zoom, and for me, I was, I couldn't make it. I couldn't afford to go to Spokane, Washington. Like that's a long drive from Mobile, Alabama. And so maybe it was just that, but I was really surprised of the national FCS media wasn't as present for some of the other media days. And even like with the SWAC, I mean, I was surprised, how many people who cover SWAC media that I know weren't there in my opinion, because I talked to, I don't know if you got listen, go check out my guy, The Real Review. Man, shout out to him, man. He's from Jackson. I know he does a lot of news stuff over in Jackson, but he was telling me, he was like, all these YouTubers and everyone in news organizations that quote unquote cover the swag, the fact that they weren't there at SWAC Media Day says a lot about, do they actually want to cover the SWAC, and are they serious about being media? And I know my guy Scotty had his own issues with the SWAC, but like everyone else, it was weird not seeing. I think Coach Walker was the only other guy who I saw at SWAC Media Day. And man, I want to give a shout out to Jamie Walker, Stephen Gaither, Dr. Cavill, and some of the other guys that I got to meet in person. Man, listen, Stephen Gaither was with me like every step of the way, man. I saw him at SWAC Media Day. He came up to Charlotte with, and I saw him at Big South Media Day, and I saw him at MEAC Media Day in Norfolk, man. And so, um, it, it was really cool to finally meet those guys and listen. It was wild, man. Listen, the setup. I want to give a shout out, man. HBCU game day, Stephen Gaither and them. Listen, the setup they had at SWAC Media Day. I know you guys probably saw it in the videos with the couch and the background. The setup to see in person was insane, man. Was absolutely insane. And yeah, my bad. Also, swacking a full man, got to meet G as well. But man, listen, Stephen Gaither and them guys, man, they had the setup at SWAC Media Day, and I got a lot of ideas on how I need to improve on equipment, what I need to improve for media day next year, man. So we're gonna try to take it up a next level. Next year for Media Day, man. But I appreciate y'all rocking with me in terms of Media Day covers, man. I got most of the videos up and everything. We're gonna be dropping some articles this week, kind of recapping the interview, spotlight some of the players. I dropped an article on Andrew Body today, man, on our website, thebluebloodspod.com, man. But listen, I got a little bit of time, probably 15, 20 minutes to take some calls. If you guys want to call in, I'm gonna get the call line up right now. So call in, and also, man, any comments or anything that you guys want to address, man, put it in the chat, and we'll knock this thing out in the next 20 minutes or so. Some of the conferences are just particular about YouTubers. I've had the same challenges getting credentials for the Carolina Panthers. Sometimes they just pick you for no reason. Yeah, that's interesting, man. Because I, listen. An advice to any up and coming media. Okay, if you're just if you're just a YouTuber and this is all you want to do is just hop on YouTube, get some views, everything like that. We all good, man. Everything's cool. Like that's what you want to do. That's good. But like if you are actually wanting to get into media, my number one advice to you guys: start a website. Start a website. Starting a website and writing and getting your name out there as a real as a real publication is like the first step to actually getting respect, man. We started the website in May, and since May, all conference teams, all the American teams, credentials are coming so easy because every time you apply for a credential, for anybody out there who's thinking about starting a show, having a website is a criteria. You have to put your website, you have to put your company and register yourself as an LLC. Whatever your name is, everything, register yourself as an LLC because that puts you down as a company, a real organization, and therefore everything. Listen, this ain't a business podcast, man. I'm just trying to give a little bit of game out there in terms of how to do that. But that's a big thing, man, because ever since we got the website, man, the credentials have been much easier to obtain because they're looking at you as real media in terms of what you do. Because like, I don't know if you guys saw, just for schedule, man, if you want to, if because I love talking to people who support the show and everything, man. So if you guys want to catch me, i will be in um I will be in Atlanta for the MEAC SWAC challenge. Credentials just came in yesterday. I believe we got approved for that. So we'll be in Atlanta for the MEAC SWAC challenge. I will be in Lorman week 1 for Stephen F. Austin versus Alcorn State. And then I will also be there in week 2, Tennessee State, Jackson State in Memphis. And then let me pull up the list here because I have a list of games that are confirmed. Also October 15th, man. I want to shout out my girl. Let's see. Um, Listen, we're gonna do a YouTuber thing in Southern October 15th, Alcorn State Southern in Baton Rouge. We are going to be there, and we are going to have have like a YouTuber thing. Then shout out to my girl, I believe it's Pezzy on Instagram. She hit me up, and we're gonna definitely do that. And I keep seeing, let's see, my top 25. Let's see if I can pull it up. Hang on, man. All right, while I work the pool, but man, it's all good, man. I just want to give out a little bit of thing, man. Let's Oh, no, Paris, I will be at Boombox too. Okay, so the only like, I'm going to Alcorn Southern because I was invited by somebody. They said they're gonna hook me up, and they want to that they have an idea on like a YouTube, like a media type thing they want to do, and so that's why I'm going to go to that game. And I got personally invited to that one, man. And anytime anyone personally invites me to a game, I got you guys. Let's see if I can pull this up. Let's see. I don't have a graphic, man. So let me see if I can share my screen. Try not to give out anyone's number or anything like that. All right, let's see if I can share my screen. Let's see. All right, it isn't letting me share it, T, but I can just name off my top 25 for you, man. Um, so at 25, I had Monmouth, 24, Weber State, 23, Northern Iowa, 22, South Dakota, 21, Eastern Kentucky, 20, Southeastern Louisiana, 19, Eastern Washington, 18, I had Mercer, 17, Holy Cross, 16, UT Martin, 15, Incarnate Word, 14, Jackson State, 13, Chattanooga, 12, Delaware, 11, East Tennessee State or ETSU, 10, Villanova, 9, Southern Illinois, 8, Stephen F. Austin, 7, Kennesaw State, 6, Sacramento State, 5, Missouri State, 4, Montana State, 3, Montana, and then South Dakota State and North Dakota State. Round out my top 25 at 1 and 2. I'll post a link in the comments for anybody who wants to check that out. So it's right there. You guys can pull it up, and any questions y'all have, I got you guys. Let's see. Blue, what's the JSU line looking like here? He said they solid. Um, the offensive line for me, I think they've improved it. They've definitely they've landed some guys that I think have immense talent. Tyler Brown, Evan Henry, Zach Bro. I think all three of those guys have great talent, great fundamentals. They have the mean streak that I think was really lacking for Jackson State last year. But the biggest thing, Calvin, and I'll speak about this so much, is you have to build chemistry, man. You have to build chemistry. You have to be able to play together. And yes, Evan Henry and Zach Bro played together, and so they'll probably have that chemistry. But when I look at the offensive line, the biggest needs were guard, center, guard. The tackle spot was inconsistent, but guard, center, guard was atrocious last year at times for Jackson State. And so for me, you put Zach Bro in at center. This is a guy that has already proven he can play center. That's where he's most comfortable. Put him at center. Evan Henry's going to be one guard, and then you got Tyler Brown at the other guard. And Tyler was on a Joe Moore Award finalist offensive line at Louisiana Lafayette. He knows what it takes to build a culture. And I had an interview with him, and you guys can check it out on the channel, Tyler Brown. But he spoke about he knows what it takes to build chemistry, and he's coming in to be a leader on that offensive line. And so I think when you look at what they can do in terms of leadership, as long as the team buys into the vision that they're selling, I got a feeling, in my opinion, that the offensive line is going to take a big step forward, and really and truly they should, because in year two, under the same offensive line coach, you have to be able to build that chemistry. And at the tackle spot, I think Simi Mawala is probably going to be one. And then that other one's probably going to be between Willis Patrick and some other guys that they landed this offseason. And listen, let's see. Tony Gray, listen, I will be shocked if Tony Gray starts unless he improved a lot. I'll just say that. I don't know if Tony Gray is going to be a starter, but he's not going to start at guard spot. He would have to slide back out to tackle, and I don't know if Jackson State is going to do that, in my opinion. Let's see. Blue, who do you think is most likely to pull off an FBS upset in the SWAC? Oh man, Simi's gone. Oh, then I don't know who starts at the two tackle spots. That's tough. I didn't even know Simi left. Wow. Yeah, okay. Then the tackle spots are a big concern for me. I will say this. The guard center guard spot might be the strength of the offensive line, because I don't know who's going to start at those tackle spots now. I know Willis Patrick has some promising film, but listen, that is tough. The fact that Simi Moala already left, that is brutal. Oh, wow. Okay, the optimism for the offensive line went down a few notches. I'll be honest with you guys. Those tackle spots worry me now. Let's see. Blue, who do you think is most likely to pull off an FBS upset in the SWAC? Um, mm, okay, I'm trying to think of FBS games in the SWAC right now. I think mm, it's tough, man, because Jackson State doesn't play an FBS team. Southern plays LSU, and they're not beating LSU. FAMU's not going to go out there in week 0 and beat North Carolina on the road. Um, I you know is So Drizzy, the short answer is nobody, because I don't think this is the year for a SWAC upset over an FBS team. I really don't see it happening. I know a lot of people are talking about Grambling over Arkansas State, and if Grambling goes out there, game one of the Hugh Jackson era, with a new quarterback and like 12 new starters, and beats an FBS team, the SWAC is in trouble. I'm just going to say that the SWAC is in trouble if they go out and do that. So I don't see that upset really happening right now. Maybe if it was year 2 or 3 under Hugh Jackson. A lot of people have been talking about North Texas, Texas Southern. I don't see that happening either, man, especially early in the season. I mean, potentially that could happen, but I don't personally see it. I think you also put Alabama A&M. They got those two big games, UAB and Troy. UAB is going to be interesting. And let me say this: if they still had the coach that just retired, I'm blanking on his name, Bill Clark. If they still had Bill Clark, that's a blowout. Alabama A&M would have zero shot if Bill Clark was still the coach. But the fact that he left so unexpectedly, and that team kind of experienced a little bit of turnover this offseason, that's a game that I think gets real interesting, because I think Alabama A&M is going to bring a lot of fans to Birmingham, and I think that could be a game where Connell Maynard really wants to go out there and make a statement. It's week 1. That could be interesting. Troy, potentially, but I think Troy is going to be a pretty solid Sun Belt team. But I think UAPB, because they lost Bill Clark, and that team could be in a little bit of a disarray, that could be a game you probably could watch, but for me, Jersey, I don't think it's this year. I think the best opportunity for the SWAC to win an FBS beat an FBS team next season when Jackson State goes and plays Texas State. Right now, look at projecting the rosters. Jackson State should beat Texas State next season, and I think that will be the FBS upset that everyone's waiting on. That's just my opinion right now. Is that next year will be the game that I think next year will be the year that the SWAC finally gets that FBS win. That you guys were, that everyone wants to happen. So that would be my pick. And I don't know who FAMU plays in terms of FBS next season. So possibly, if depending on who they play, if they can get like an FIU or an FAU or something like that. But I personally can't see right now FAMU over North Carolina. At no chance, in my opinion. Listen, North Dakota State should be a favorite over Arizona, champ. I'm going to be honest that I will take North Dakota State 7.5 right now over Arizona. That's just me. What's the chances of Holy Cross and UT Chattanooga getting a first round bye? 0. Lawrence, I talked with this. I was on Sam Herder's podcast, FCS Talkers. I forget what it's called. Holy Cross has 0 chance. They're not going to give a bye week to a team out of the Patriot League, and UT Chattanooga potentially, I think, has a better chance than Holy Cross, but I think the SoCon is going to be too good this year, and I don't see them going undefeated, which is what it would take for them to get a bye, to get a first round bye. I think when you look at the 8 seeds right now that get bye weeks, Lawrence, I think 6 of them are already taken. In my opinion, I think no matter what happens, unless it's an epic collapse of cataclysmic proportions, man, or something like that, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana, Missouri State, Sacramento State all have one locked up, and I think Kennesaw potentially could be that 7th. So I don't know if there's going to be a lot of at-large bids. I mean, bye week bids up there, that top 8 seed, Lawrence. So I don't think Holy Cross or Chattanooga get that seed, and it's a 0% chance for Holy Cross because they're not giving it to one at the of a team in the Patriot League. Let's see, Texas State, Alabama State came pretty close in 2019. A&M has a shot, especially with Clark retiring. I agree with that. Kennesaw will go FBS very soon, Jabari. I think they're kind of buying their time as the landscape kind of shifts, but we'll see. I was planning on homecoming in Southern, and I got a call from my god, I'll just get married the same day as SU. FAMU ain't on FIU or FAU's level yet. FAU maybe not, Leon. I don't love FIU. I'll say that. And North Arizona smacked them last year, Coach Simmons, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it wasn't even a close game. So Arizona got better. I think they landed a pretty solid recruiting class, but I still think they have a long way to go. Been trying to tell the Aggies North Dakota State will be a harder game than against Duke. That is a fact. I agree. I agree with that. CUSA needs to get Kennesaw State. Yeah, the phone line's up. My bad, Larry. You did call in, and hang on. What's up, Larry, man? You're live.
What's up, sir?
What's up, man? Chat, can y'all hear him on the phone line? I just want to make sure before we keep going, man.
Yeah, man. I just wanted to ask you in terms of the media day. So you went to the SWAC Media Day. Did you go to the MEAC Media Day?
Yeah, I went to the MEAC too.
Okay. So SWAC, to me, based on your earlier comment, bigger, disorganized. What about the MEAC? Were they just as big, more well organized? And then of all the FCS media days that you saw, who was just better? In fact, rank them. Top 5.
Man, oh man, you're gonna get me in trouble on this one. The media presence wasn't as much at the MEAC. They just didn't have. I mean, they had. I don't remember what it was called. It's HBCU something. I didn't see them at SWAC Media Day though, but it's some HBCU station or whatever. There were a few news stations from Norfolk covering the Norfolk State. So I know you guys knew I didn't get an interview with the Norfolk State players because they were off recording with news stations all day, so I didn't get a chance to get them. The MEAC was smaller, man, but I think the MEAC was in a nicer location. Listen, man, Norfolk is beautiful, man. They had it in one of the nicest hotels in the city, and everything was organized. So like every coach had a table with like a nameplate, and next to him was a taller table, which I know y'all saw some of my interviews where they had a jersey and a helmet and everything. So the MEAC didn't have a big, and I've already said the SWAC had a 4 or 5 times, more media presence than any other conference. It wasn't even close. It was SWAC and everybody else in terms of overall media. Now the ranking these, listen, listen. I don't want to I don't want to burn any bridges. It was their first ever media day. The ASUN was probably the least exciting and least, I would say, enjoyable for me because it was one, their first ever media day. Two,
Got it.
Jacksonville State didn't even want to be there because they're leaving. And
Mm,
so Jacksonville State can't compete for a conference title. They can't compete for the playoffs. So they did their like media session, interviewed with like the local, Alabama stations or whatever, and they dipped.
okay.
And so that kind of aggravated me. And also, Coach Wells for Eastern Kentucky, I really wanted to talk to him. There was a 7-on-7 camp in Atlanta that he had to get to immediately after his interview. And so
Okay.
a lot of the coaches and players were too busy with like the local media and everything to really, talk to, people like me and everything. So that kind of aggravated me, but it was their first ever media day. They're a new conference, and I'll give them a break on that. And shout out to Brian Morgan for the ASUN, man. He did everything he could to kind of help, the FCS media. But listen, when a whole team, when one of your biggest teams don't even want to be there, there's nothing, there it's really hard to kind of get that together. But in terms of the other ones, man, they're hard to rank because they were all great, man, in their own way. Like the Southland,
Yeah.
amazingly organized. All the coaches and players and SIDs were super helpful, and they were make
Mm,
sure everybody in the media room got an interview. Everyone in the media got introduced and everything like that. And the setup was pretty cool. The one thing I wish is that they had kind of like a media table where I could set up my laptop and things like that. I was using like a waiter tray on a stand to like set everything up. And so I think I think they could have done a little better in the media room, but I think that was also me. That was my first ever media day, so it was a big learning experience for me for the Southland. The SoCon was amazing, man. Listen, I already said they had it in
mm,
Asheville, North Carolina, in the mountains,
yep.
in the Appalachian Mountains, at some big fancy resort, and it was beautiful. The location, they had the same team tables as the MEAC did with jerseys and helmets and things like that, and all the SIDs and everyone were great in terms of giving out their information and allowing coaches and players. And also, the SoCon might have been the most organized. When the media walked in, they had a minute by minute schedule of where coaches and players are going to be at all times. And
Wow.
so it allowed you to kind of plan your day because it's like, okay, the Citadel, Chattanooga, Furman, VMI are going to be off here. So I need to get interviews with Western Carolina, Mercer and whoever. And so it allowed the media a lot more flexibility on how to get interviews. And all the
Hmm.
coaches were great in terms of, talking to you and things like that. So SoCon was amazing. The problem is the SoCon didn't have a big media presence, and they really have to step up their social media game. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people on Twitter and YouTube and everything really rip the SWAC as a whole for social media presence. The SoCon ranked 28th out of 32 conferences, including some D2 conferences.
Ouch, ouch, ouch.
Yeah, so not great. And then in terms of some of the other media, SWAC was fine, man. Like I said, my
Yeah.
biggest thing was how chaotic it was. But the problem
Yeah.
was is I don't think they had the staff there to organize it any better than they did. It was really just like
There you go.
a a dog eat dog world. Like if you wanted an interview, you had to fight for that interview, especially if you wanted a Jackson State interview. So I know you guys saw my interview with Shador. To get
Yeah.
that interview with Shador, I had to pull one of the Jackson State guys to the side and say, listen, find me. Here's my name. Here's where you can find me. Before y'all leave, come grab me and I will interview Shador Sanders. And so I got Shador right as they were leaving.
Got it.
And
Let me ask you
go ahead.
one more question. It's a small one. I noticed that the Big South is a smaller conference, and I think North Carolina A&T is leaving.
Mhm.
Is it possible that they might work with the MEAC so that they could also potentially have a football team go to the Celebration Bowl and then the FCS playoffs?
Potentially, but they already kind of had that with the OVC. So at the
Got it.
luncheon, the OVC commissioner was there and they talked about the alliance that they're coming up with. So I think the Big South is doing that. It's just going to be with the OVC.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and the OVC was remote, so that was over Zoom and everything. It is what it is. The Big South was cool. It had the same thing as the SWAC did. I don't know if you guys heard on the interview, like the Jacob Roberts interview was very hard in terms of listening to because of the audio, because everything was on top of each other. So at one end of the room, they had the stage recording, and then the other end, they had all the media in one little spot. So it was very hard to kind of get that personalized interview with good audio, good lighting, good things like that. And that's why you saw a lot of my interviews sitting at the team table right up on the coach or player, because that was the only way to get good interview. You there, man? I
Sorry,
think
I was on mute.
yeah. Oh no, you good. But yeah, so
Yeah.
overall, man, everyone was great. The ASUN had their issues, but it was kind of out of their control, in my opinion.
All right. Hey, brother, thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Let's see, man. Let me get to some of these. Hey, I appreciate you, man, Israel. That was a tough one to get. Listen, and I still kick myself for not getting Dion, but I don't think you guys really understand how hard it was to try to get Coach Prime for an interview, man. That next year we're going to get a Coach Prime interview one on one, but this year, man, I had to kind of weigh my options. It was like, do I wait for like the whole day to try to get Coach Prime, or do I go get the interviews I did and go meet SIDs and things like that? So kind of had to weigh my options, but we are going to get that. Drizzly, the Travis interview already dropped, man. You can go to you can go to my page. I is somewhere we posted like 50 something videos for Media Day. So you can go to our FCS Media Day playlist, man, and it's on there. It's one of the probably the first 10 videos on that playlist. Let's see. Is it me? Man, Shador did look a little he was taller in person than I thought he was. I will be honest. He really a truly, man, he did look a little bit taller in person. I'm gonna be honest, because I'm 6'1", and even to me, like, he was pretty tall. So maybe it was the shoes, the way I was standing, he was standing, man. He does look tall, but he carries himself, like really good posture and everything. So maybe it's that too. Great over Shallow. I do agree. I think I've been vocal about this, Starlight. I do think Gregory Great is better than Shiloh as a safety. In my opinion, Great's potential is one of the highest in the SWAC. I think with his experience, with his talent, with as talented of a with as talented as the secondaries he's going to be playing with, especially at the corner spots, I think Great has the potential to be one of the top safeties in the SWAC. And so it's not a dig at Shiloh, but to me, I personally think that Gregory Great is a little bit better and should get that starting spot. I think him and I think Great and Cam should be the two starting safeties in my opinion for Jackson State. Let's see. Yes, Great is going to be a really, really good, man. Let me see. There was a few other comments, man. I wanted to yeah, the OVC partnership, communicating with sports information directors is important at SWAT Media Day. Yeah, that was the biggest thing, man. Networking at the media days was really and truly the biggest thing for me. It wasn't even the interviews, it wasn't even the traveling. It was just being able to go introduce myself and being like, listen, all those, because the sports information directors all knew who I was because I emailed them our All-American, our all conference, our top 25. So like just to kind of give y'all a perspective of how it all went. every single time I dropped an all conference team, an all American team, or a top 25, I emailed every single SID for every single school that had a player make an all American and all conference or a team that was on our top 25. I sent them a personalized email letting them know which players and where they were ranked and things like that. So they all knew who I was, but it was really good to kind of, that being able to introduce myself. You had Coach Pugh impressed, man. Hey, I appreciate, man. Coach Pugh was really cool to talk to, man. That was one of the interviews I felt like I was nervous for just because of the aura of him. But for me, man, I was really, really excited to talk to him, man. He was so down to earth in that interview, man. And so I appreciate Coach Pugh, Jablonski Green, and Corey Phillips, man. Those guys were great. I'm going to be honest with you, man. It was really fun talking to them. Wait, SWAC is not all HBCUs in the FBS. Wait up, Russell, what you talking about? Yeah, I don't know what you. Yeah, we got the MEAC too, man. We got the MEAC. Um, let's see. Shallow is not seeing that spot after injury. What you know about New Haven going to the MEAC? I haven't heard anything about that, Coach Green. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not heard anything. I mean, I have to do some research on New Haven. I'm not familiar with, their athletic programs, their budget, anything like that. So, uh, I don't know, Coach Green. I'm gonna be honest. I'll do some research though in next live stream, and if you want to bring it back up, we can definitely talk about it. Let's see. We need to move Nugget to safety, to be honest. Coach Pugh got that for James Aura. Let's see, doing a weekly playoff prediction ballot. So Lawrence, my plan is, and I know Sean asked about this in the comments when I announced that I was voting. Each week, I'm going to release my top 25 on the website and probably do it live on my weekly recap. So things are really changing this season, guys, compared to last season. My game previews are still there, but I am going to go live on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, somewhere in there, maybe twice a week, to really preview some of these games and get your guys' opinions. That way, you guys can bring me the games you guys want to hear. We can break them down together. It'll be a call-in show. I'll have film ready, everything like that. We're going to do it big this year for the season, and then on Sunday nights, maybe Monday, depending on because I got a lot of games I'm going to travel to. We're going to do a live stream, recap everything, and on that I will give my top 25 that I submit officially to FCS stats perform. But then about week probably 9 or 10, Lawrence, I'll probably start dropping my weekly playoff prediction bracket on who I think makes the playoffs. I'll have at large bids, I'll have on the bubble, first four in, first four out, all everything like that. So I'll definitely be doing all that, Lawrence. So stay tuned for that. We're gonna have a whole rollout for that on the website and the channel. So do you think that Tennessee State and or South Carolina State will come to the SWAC? Probably not right now, Gabriel. I think there's probably a better chance Tennessee State does. I think as long as the MEAC is up and kicking, South Carolina State is going to stay right where they are. Tennessee State potentially if the OVC collapses, but I wouldn't bank on it right now. I think the SWAC and MEAC and OVC are probably good where they are right now. So I don't think that's coming down the pipeline. Maybe in a few years though, as things shift. What do you think? South Carolina State would have more All-Americans. No, Paris, because I don't think the MEAC perception in terms of national FCS is really high. I think they had one All-American on our list, and I don't know if I think maybe Jablonski Green was on FCS stats, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know about Hero Sports off the top of my head, but really and truly, they had a bunch of all conference selections. But the problem is, I think there's a lot of people in terms of national FCS media that want to see them do it out of conference. And so I think South Carolina State's going to be just fine. I think Jablonski Green has a good chance to be an All-American at the end of the year. BJ Davis at linebacker. I think the wide receiver Shaq Davis, who was already an All-American for us, I think has a really good chance to make that run. I also think the running back, I'm blanking on his name, the running back for South Carolina State could be really good as well. So we'll see what develops in the secondary for them. Jablonski Green, the next NFL draftee coming out of South Carolina State. I agree with that. Tennessee State ranked 4th. I forgot to pull the OVC up, but yeah, Tennessee State was 4th T. Blue has gone full professional media outlet, man. I appreciate you, man. Which SWAC school's talking about leaving? I don't think I don't think any are talking about leaving right now. If I'm not mistaken. Um, at least I don't know. I don't think any SWAT schools are going to talk about leaving, man. But let me open back up the call line, man. I was going to wrap it up, but Calvin, if you want to call in, I'll open it back up real quick for you. Um,
You are the
let me
only
see.
participant in the conference.
Yeah, so if you want to call in, man, we'll give it just a few more minutes, man, and then we're gonna wrap this up. But I don't think anybody's talking about leaving, Calvin. Call the number is in the top though. Let's see right here. Tennessee State and South Carolina are not coming to the SWAC. Do you see the MEAC having one team in the playoffs? No, probably not, Coach Green. It would take. Oh, I mean, maybe. Okay, it would have to be a situation like FAMU and Jackson State last year. I think. I think when you look at it, it would have to be a situation where South Carolina State or NCCU. I think those are probably the two teams that potentially could happen. So we got two callers. There's Coach Green and Calvin. Man, Calvin, I'll get to you first, and then Coach Green, I'm coming to you. What's up, Calvin? You're live.
Hey, what's going on, Blue?
What's up, man?
Hey, quick question though. Like I remember on another live trip, you said if Dion takes Jackson State to the FBS, there were like two SWAT schools that could potentially leave us. Now I don't know, you didn't ever give them, but only two schools I can think about is Texas schools.
I think if Jackson State made the move, and we're talking about because they can't, I don't think they're going to be able to make the move at least for another 3 years. I think if they're thinking about making the move, they're going to do what they can to prepare at least two other schools to go, whether that's FAMU, even if it's Tennessee State in the OVC, even if it's Southern, they're going to get one of those natural rivals for them to come with them. And so I think when you're talking about leaving, you're looking at least 3 to possibly even 6, 7 years down the line. And if Jackson State's preparing to make that move, they've talked to other teams and they're going to prepare to make it with them. I just don't foresee Jackson State making the jump without another SWAT school following them.
Oh, I agree with it. I think you said that the two Texas schools might be going to the Southland.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, you're talking about that. Yes. Listen, the Southland commissioner was very vocal that Grambling was strongly considering coming to the Southland.
I didn't see that coming. I thought it was Texas Southern Prairie.
And what I was told is they denied it for publicity, standards, but there was real interest between both the Texas schools and Grambling.
All right. A couple other questions about. I know you're trying to wrap this up. I didn't watch that Incarnate Word pay-per-view game last year.
Mm-hmm.
But I did look at the score. I just browsed. I looked at the stats, and it wasn't that impressive from Cameron Ward. Did you watch that game?
I watched at least the highlights of it, and I thought they did a good job of shutting down the offense, but man, they just kept shooting themselves in the foot, man. The fact that they kept the defense on the field that long really hurt them, and they just gave up too many explosive plays, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was looking. I looked at the stats. I'm probably gonna rewatch it.
It's an interesting game.
And speaking of film, I was watching a lot of. I'm a Jack State fan all day. So I watched a lot of film. I was just focused on an offensive line last year. It's hard to see technique from the game film.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But I can see schemes and like missed assignments and that guard center guard combination. It's just horrible. Like especially on twist. Like they couldn't find the guy.
Any stunts kill Jackson State. There was no communication. If you twisted, if you slanted, anything, everyone was just like, we're gonna block right what's in front of us, and that's it. If you move from that spot, you were getting destroyed. And I think you saw that with in the Celebration Bowl. everyone blames turnovers, but those turnovers are due to the offensive line. Tony Gray got destroyed on that play, and that's what got Shador hit, and that's what caused the fumble that changed the entire game.
Tony Gray, the right tackle. Well, Cedric Dunbar was playing right tackle, but he was a center. He was like an all-conference center before COVID. Like, I think he might have been out of position.
I think so. I think what happened is they weren't expecting the offensive line to be as bad as it was, and so they kind of panicked moving people around, trying to find what worked chemistry-wise, and they just never seemed to find it.
Yeah. Now, how long does it take to develop chemistry in offensive line?
Say that again.
How long does it take chemistry to develop an offensive line?
I think it depends on every unit, because in every unit you have a certain number of returning guys and you have a certain number of experience for certain offensive line guys. So when you look at Jackson State coming into this year, you have 3 guys on the interior that have a lot of experience and 2 guys that have played with each other. So I really do think they could probably build up that chemistry by game 2 or game 3. And what helps them is they have a big challenges. I think they probably are going to face probably 3 of the top 4 defensive lines in weeks 1 through 3. They get FAMU, you got Gentle Hunt, Isaiah Land. Week 2, you get Tennessee State. They have 3-4 all-conference selections on the defensive line. And then week 3, you got to go face I believe it's Sundaya Anderson for Grambling on the defensive end, who's a first-team all-conference selection. You're going to get tested early, and so I think it's going to help them build that chemistry extremely, extremely fast because they're so experienced.
Well, I mean, I'm agreeing with you one thing. The tenacity wasn't there.
I agree.
Communication wasn't there. And I was trying to look back at the offensive line coach, and I was trying to pull back and see what he did other places. I mean, the way I grade people is how they did other places, other stops.
He has he
was at Ole Miss.
Yeah. He's good. Usually. His history would suggest that Jackson State's offensive line would be good. Like he's a pretty good offensive line coach in his previous stops. It's just last year, man, they didn't click very well.
Well, we'll see. What's going on in A&M? I like smashing them.
In terms of A&M, it's like I said earlier, it's all about that defense, in my opinion. I think Quincy Casey's locked down the quarterback spot, especially due to Jaron Williams stepping away. Abdul is one of the best wide receivers in the FCS. The offensive line is going to be they got to have some sort of improvement, man. I think when you look at that Jackson State game, Akil was on his deathbed at times. They were getting destroyed. And so the offensive line has to get better, but it's all about that defensive chemistry. Like I mentioned, when you might have 11 new starters on the defense, man, that's tough. And so, like I said, it can go one of 2 ways. Either they click and you had a bunch of upgrades and your defense takes a big step forward like it did with Jackson State, or that doesn't click and you could be in for a long season if that defense doesn't build chemistry and all those players live up to the hype that they had coming in.
There's like 2 very important positions on defense. You need your free safety and your mic.
That's a fact.
They got to be vocal.
You do. I mean,
they're in charge of getting everybody in the right position.
They didn't communicate at all last year. Like I mentioned, when players go in motion and the defense doesn't say anything, doesn't move, doesn't adjust, that's on the Mike linebacker. He's the quarterback of the defense, and no one called anything. There wasn't a motion. There wasn't a call for that. They just let Josh Lanier run across the formation and score a touchdown.
Yeah. A couple last questions. I'm about to wrap this up. I know you're trying to get off.
I know you're good, man.
Non-conference games you're looking forward
to? Stephen F. Austin Alcorn is the first one that comes to mind. I'm extremely excited for that one. KJ Kinsler versus Xavier Gibson. I think Xavier Gibson is, without a doubt, no argument. I'll debate it all day. is the best wide receiver in the FCS. And in my opinion, that's going to be a great stylistic matchup. You have a high flying offense against a run first type team like Alcorn on the road. I think Lorman's going to show out, especially because it's week 1. We'll see how that turns out. Valley and Tarleton State is another interesting one. Valley travels to Tarleton, I believe it's week 1 or 2. And Tarleton has a new quarterback, has a few holes on that defense that they have to fill. If Dancy can go out there and win that game, I will be extremely, extremely impressed with Valley. And that will be a rude awakening for the SWAC because Tarleton State's not going to be a pushover. And then I think the obvious one, man, Campbell and Jackson State, man, with the recruiting classes, with how good those teams potentially could be, that could be one of the games of the year, man, especially on top of it, the environment with homecoming and everything. I love it. I'm excited for that game. If Campbell can come into that game with one or fewer losses, I think that game could potentially be a game that the entire country is invested in.
Well, I lied. I got 3 questions. One, I was looking at that Alabama A&M versus Austin Peay game.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Peay, they were a solid OVC team. I think A&M should come out on top. What's your opinion on that?
A&M should be the favorite. I think when you look at Austin Peay, Dre McCray at the wide receiver spot is going to be a problem, but they lost, I believe, their starting quarterback in Draylon Ellis, who went to Tennessee State. You also, I believe they lost their starting running back. They lost I personally believe they lost a few offensive linemen. I'll have to double check that. Defensive line wrecked by the transfer portal. The secondary is going to be strong for them, but going into Huntsville with a young team with a young coach and Scotty Walden, I think A&M should be the favorite. And if they lose that game, that could be really, really tough for A&M because those first 4 games, UAB, Troy, Austin Peay, and FAMU, let's say they come in 0-2, that Austin Peay game is a must win because you could not go into Tallahassee and brag 0-3.
I agree. That's any chance of postseason. This is canceled after that.
I agree. They could be in trouble, and that's not even including you still got Jackson State on the schedule.
And then Grambling.
Yeah, it's going to be a problem.
I mean, it could end up really bad for A&M if it doesn't. That's a must-win. I agree. That's a must-win.
1,000%.
Well, last question. I'm going to let you go. Hot seats in the SWAC.
I think Terry Sims at Bethune.
Yep.
That would be a big one. And Clarence McKinney, man, as well, at Texas Southern. If Andrew Body has a big year and they still don't win, I think that Texas Southern administration is going to say, how do we keep Andrew here? If he explodes and that defense doesn't live up to the hype, do they try to go and get out a big time coach to entice him to stay? And because they might see their window to go win the SWAC closing as Andrew Body gets older. So if he has a big season and Clarence McKinney has to go to make way for Andrew Body to live up to the hype, that's going to be a big one to watch. And then I think Doc Gamble at UAPB, I know he just went to the SWAC championship in the spring, but if he has another season like he did last year, man, I would be very surprised if UAPB didn't try to make a move.
That has got to be the most inconsistent program I've ever seen in my life. SWAC championship game, the worst, and next year they're probably going to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Well, I ain't going to hold you, Blue.
I appreciate you, man.
I know.
All right, guys, I'm going to take Coach Green's call, and then we're going to wrap it up. Coach Green, you're live. You're shutting down the show, man. What you doing?
Oh, man, you know me, man. So how you doing, man?
Hey, doing good, man. Doing good. Trying to get back in the flow of things, man, after traveling.
Man, you was doing some traveling, Blue. But I got one thing I might have to disagree with you on.
Okay.
And it's not often I disagree with you. The Grambling leaving SWAC, the only way I saw that happening, they are not going to move without Southern.
Potentially.
They
Okay,
are.
because if you go to the Southland, let's just say this, they have however many teams in that conference, the Bayou Classic could stay. Like that might not be affected. And so really and truly, I mean, yes, they probably don't move without Southern, but all I know is it was the Texas schools in Grambling, and they did have interest. Now, I don't know if Southern did or had any talks or the Southland reached out. I didn't get to ask him that question, but he said there was real interest on those teams potentially leaving until Dion landed down in the SWAC.
Yeah, I understand that part, but because of the people I know at Southern, they are like how UCLA and
USC.
USC. That's how they are joined at the hip.
I mean, it's potential. And he could have been talking about the Texas schools probably were more in the boat than Grambling, and they were just trying to convince Grambling. But the word on the street around the building is that if Jackson State or whoever decide to take their chances at the FBS level, that those schools would join the Southland and dip out of the SWAC.
Yeah, because now this is what I do know, because Dr. Xavier talked about it. Southland actually was trying to convince Southern to come to the Southland.
Yeah, I knew that.
So that's why they was going after Grambling, because like you said, Grambling probably was listening, and Grambling probably relayed to him on the way we'll move if y'all can convince Southern.
I think that would be an interesting. So before Coach Prom landed down, that move would have been extremely interesting, because now you're looking at the Southland with a really strong hold on Texas, man. They would have some major markets in Texas and some recruiting ties. So, I mean, the move makes sense for the Southland, but I think a lot of people would look at it sideways, especially for me, coming from an outsider perspective of how much flack Tennessee State and North Carolina A&T get. I would really be interested to see if one of the quote unquote blue blood programs in Grambling or one of the SWAC founding members in one of the Texas schools dipped out, what the pushback or what the response would be from longtime SWAC fans.
And you know what? I know people talk about it little, but other than Dion, another thing that helped the SWAC was when they got Bethune-Cookman and FAMU.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Because all that get glossed over because Sanders came to the SWAC, but that was big and very important.
It brought in a lot of money and attention and two big brands, especially in FAMU. FAMU is a huge brand, nationally. So I think that looking back now that hindsight's 2020, how much did the under the table talks of these other schools potentially leaving the SWAC push the SWAC to make that move for FAMU and Bethune-Cookman?
You're right about that.
Looking back now, it makes a little bit more sense, doesn't it?
It does.
Because you can't lose to Texas schools. If you're the SWAC, that I mean, I know right now they might not be at the top of the SWAC, but those schools are still important to the foundation of the conference, in my opinion.
Because it did help, like you said, it brought in more money, and potentially whatever new media deal they make will be substantial, especially if they have a good football year as a conference.
Exactly. So that's a big thing. And I mean, it makes you think that what is the SWAC's perception? Because of all this realignment talk, and we know any Jackson State or FAMU or Southern or whoever moving up is a long-term conversation. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to be some years down the line. The question becomes is how panicked does the SWAC become if those schools actually begin to look at that move as a real possibility?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
So
a lot of moving
it's gonna be
pieces.
back. Everything gonna come off with this NCAA meeting gonna be after this
Yep.
NCAA meeting.
I agree. And once that settles, I think the dust at the NCAA, the administration level, that has to settle, while also all the dust at the FBS level has to settle. And then I think the next round of FCS schools are going to make their move, because what we've seen is a lot of these big moves happen in big waves. And so I think a lot of schools, programs, you look at like the Kennesaw States, Eastern Kentucky's, etc., they're really waiting to make their next move until they know what the landscape looks like, because the worst thing you can do right now is make a jump, and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out on you and you end up having to come back, wasting a bunch of money. So I think a lot of schools are kind of slow playing their decisions, and once that dust settles, you're going to see all kind of different cards fall.
Oh, and here's another interesting nugget. You know how the CAA talking about talking about having a championship game and going and splitting the conference, right?
Yeah.
Is there potential talk of moving the playoffs back with them doing that?
Potentially, but I doubt it. What I think would happen is that the CAA would shift their conference schedule to allow them to have the conference championship game before the first round of the playoffs. That would probably be more likely, in my opinion.
I put it all on the table. So that was interesting. That I ain't expect them to talk about doing a conference championship.
I don't think they will unless they have another round of additions. I think when you look at what the CAA wants to do, they're going to go after Howard in 2023. I'm talking about they are going to throw the book at Howard. I think they're going to, if Campbell wins the Big South, they become extremely interesting in the future of realignment, because with the way they're recruiting, with what Mike Minter and that staff are doing, Campbell could potentially be the next team to look to make that jump. And then you even have to look at the rest of the MEAC teams as well. What is the NEC going to do with Morgan State and Delaware State? So right now, man, I don't think realignment's over, but the CAA, in my opinion, won't make a push like that to potentially, mess with the playoffs until they add another team or two. And I think that might be coming next all season in 2023.
Hey, and this is something that might be interesting too. I think it's a long shot, but I won't be surprised, because where Cameron located at, MEAC try to make a play for him.
Man, I think you would get too much pushback that you're adding a non-HBCU. I think the pushback would be deafening if they added Campbell rather than trying to, maybe pull in Tennessee State or someone like that. If they go and add a PWI, man, Coach Green, you're on Twitter and you're in all these SWAC spaces. All the flack that A&T and Tennessee State get, what do you think happens if the MEAC adds a PWI?
I agree with you. But what made me think that was when the MEAC commissioner was doing the interview with Dr. Caville. Caville mentioned about, that's why I asked you about New Haven. Because she brought, Caville brought that up. So that's out there.
Potentially. And I mean, there's like this weird confusion too. Listen, we got to get recruits to understand what, like, the school they're committing to, what it is. Like, I saw a kid who committed to Campbell say it was the HBCU wave. Yeah, and tag Travis Hunter and said that, like, you started this, and I'm like, I don't think I don't know if you understand, but I was like, anyway, maybe I think geographically it would make sense and it would be a huge addition for the MEAC, but I think outside of just football talk, I wonder if the whole cultural impact of the conference and everything. I just personally, I just don't see it happening, even though for me as a football guy, I wouldn't mind it happening.
Yeah, because it's also interesting, because I was looking at their schedule. When I looked at Campbell's schedule, I was surprised they was playing more than one HBCU, and the players are love it for Campbell.
Listen, it's popular right now. It's hot. When you look at in terms of FCS programs, it's Jackson State and Campbell. Nobody's hotter.
Mm-hmm. And this is the only reason I say that even though it's a long shot, I don't believe it and you don't believe it. The CIAA has that. I don't know if I think it's the CIAA. They have that one school out of North Carolina that's in their conference. That's a PWI.
Yeah, it's oh my God, what's it called? There is a
It starts
PWI.
with a C.
Huh?
It starts with a C.
Yeah, I know. Oh, it's is it Chowan? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's how
they're
you say
PW
it.
because there was a kid who played at the Legacy Bowl, and there was like a big pushback that technically he shouldn't be in the HBCU Legacy Bowl because he didn't play at HBCU, but he played in the HBCU conference. So there was like a weird distinction there.
Yeah.
But Mr. Campbell posted in the chat that he said he thinks it's different if a PWI came to the MEAC. He thinks they'd be welcome.
That's interesting. Shoot. Hey, Mr. Campbell, you need to call in. I need to hear more so we can hear from you, man, before the Blue hang it up.
Hey, man, I appreciate it, man. I got 2 callers on the line, Coach Screen, man. I'm going to get to them real quick, but I appreciate you calling in.
All right. Oh, no problem.
The one and only, man, Scotty, you live.
What's good, Blue?
What's good, man?
Nothing, chilling, man. Hey, hold on, let me. So I want to get back to the head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Am I echoing on your side?
No, you're good. You're good on my end.
All right, so it sounds like I'm echoing. But I want to get back to the head coaches, Jane. I don't think Terry Sims deserves to be on the chopping block. And
Okay.
this is why, because I talked to somebody earlier today, and they kind of put it in perspective for me. You know, they didn't play football for 2 years, no spring ball. The coaches were on furlough, you know what I'm saying, until like the beginning of the season. And then, you know, they had a 10-year winning streak over FAM, and FAM finally beats him with his worst team possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I think he definitely should get a break on that. But you know who needs to be on the hot seat? Clarence McKinnell. Oh yeah,
agree.
Tech Southern. Oh yeah, mess up another year with Andrew Body, see what happens. I need you to go.
That was my biggest thing. Yeah, like if you have Andrew Body, and let's say, just hypothetically, he goes and wins SWAC Offensive Player of the Year. Like he puts up 2,800 passing yards, has 1,000 rushing, whatever. If they don't finish above 4th in the division, you got to make a change because you can't risk losing Andrew.
Because listen, he will be too hot, especially in the FCS portal. You know, if he just wants to stay in the FCS, and especially if he wants to stay in the SWAC, pretty much any school in the would take him. But you definitely probably have a possibility of losing him to Power 5, especially if you're talking about keeping him in Texas, which could be Rice, which could be, you know, Sam Houston. It could be any of those programs that want to keep him in the vicinity, get up where his family's from.
That's the biggest.
But Clarence McKinley has to be on the hot seat with this dude. You can't let a talent like that not take you, you know, 3rd place, you know, 2nd place in the West or something like that. Especially when you probably have the only quarterback legit in the West.
For me, man, it's too much talent on that team, especially on offense. The offensive line's going to be good. You got wide receivers. You have an all-conference running back from last year. You got Andrew, who's an all-conference preseason selection. And that defense should not be that bad. They got solid cornerbacks. They have an all-conference linebacker. The defensive line is a question mark. Tyler Martinez at the defensive tackle spot is solid. But, man, like, they should not be giving up 500 yards a game. If they do, everyone's got to go. Everybody. Because Scotty, they were giving up like 40 points per game last year.
That's ridiculous. And you know, a lot of their talent are home based. A lot of the kids are coming from Texas. I know they got some transfers in, but I totally agree with you. But that's the guy I definitely and I heard you say Doc Gamble as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people expect UAPB to win. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just want some stability.
Possibly.
And, UAPB, they're bad for 10 years. They come out of nowhere for a year. They do well. Then they go back into hiding. So you can't really put that too much on the coach. I would give him a couple more years.
Give him like 2 more. If you can't get over 4th in the
I'll let him
division,
do his
you got to go
contract.
there.
It's just like, hey, it's not really anything you can do at UAPB. It's just like, hey, with UAPB.
That's fair. That is fair. See, I'm just looking at it, man, with the conference as a whole. I think you saw this with, I'm not making any comparisons before people quote this and chop it up and make it sound crazy. It's similar to what happened in the SEC with Nick Saban. When he came in, the recruiting picked up. They started running through the SEC. If Jackson State goes through and runs through the SWAC again, I'm talking about another undefeated season. They complete that Celebration Bowl win. I really do think there's going to be some guys who potentially wouldn't be on the hot seat that are suddenly on it just because those schools don't want to get left behind.
I'll tell you somebody that I felt that if they got the opportunity would do big things, and it's Coach Dancy. I think that's a coach that you definitely have to look at. Like if I'm a PV and I don't like Bubba, you know what I'm saying? I'll go get a Dancy. If I would have said Alabama State, but they got that dude from their alum. I just think he needs that elevation. That's probably the only coach I would really recycle within the SWAC. But if I'm Texas Southern and I let Clarence McKinley go, I gotta go give me a name.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta give me a Kevin Sumlin. I gotta give me somebody. But the worry is this: if I'm Texas Southern, I'm telling Kevin Sumlin, you gotta keep Andrew.
I agree. That's non-negotiable.
That's if you can't come in here and he's not the starter, what we doing?
1,000%. Because you can't. It's the same thing. Like if let's say Ohio State's coach left, whoever you hire, that Stroud is a starter. Non-negotiable. Yeah. Don't bring in your guy. Don't bring any former players. It's CJ Stroud, or you ain't getting the job. That's it.
Facts. If you can't agree to that, we ain't even talking. And I don't give a damn what coach you got on the stuff. It's like, bro, if you're not rocking with Andrew Body, then this ain't the job for you.
Exactly. And also with that, with Dancy, I got to ask you, how do you feel about him taking the fellowship? He was selected to coach the Jaguars throughout training camp.
Isn't that going to be the same time doing your that doesn't make any sense to me.
That's why I was asking you, because I talked about it earlier. I don't know how that's going to work because he's going to have to miss Valley's training camp to go coach at the Jaguars.
First of all, I'm taking any opportunity that goes to the NFL. That just is what it is. It's Valley. Okay, it's Valley. Let's be real. It's Valley. But it is a slight on to the players because it's like, damn, you're just gonna leave us hanging like that? You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of these fellowships happen after the season was over.
Mm-hmm.
And, like OTAs and rookie mini camps and type of stuff like that. But that's how KJ Black got his opportunity with the Rams.
Yeah.
So, these opportunities could possibly come with a job in the Jaguar staff. That ain't too hard to jump on. You know what I'm saying? No. Let's be real. So I think it's a great opportunity. I would never tell nobody to take it. But if I was a Valley player, I would be like, damn, how we supposed to do something without a head coach?
Right. And on top of that, what was weird is because I knew a little bit about Dancy's background, and he's a defensive coach. He was a D coordinator. He coached, I believe it was secondary. They have him in, I would say, in the fellowship that he's coaching running backs. Why isn't he on the defensive side of the ball?
Hey, man, listen, Blue, you got to get in where you fit in, bro.
Hey, fair enough.
You got to get in where you fit in. It just, in that opportunity, they could be like, hey, Scott, I need you to teach old linemen. You don't think I'd be learning how to kick step and kick that leg?
Fair enough. Maybe it's like
never coached the old lineman in my life. I'll be on YouTube all night. Oh, that's how you punch.
It's some it's like some weird reverse thing. Like he coached defense, so maybe he knows how to scheme against running backs and can flip it to develop the running backs. But also, listen, he gets to go coach Travis Etienne, James Robinson, some of the top young backs in the NFL. I love the opportunity for him, but I do feel bad for Caleb Johnson and some of those Valley players because now do you just promote the assistant head coach to head coach for training camp, or do you try to work it around? I don't know how that's going to work, and I don't think Valley said anything about it, so I'll be interested to see how that works.
And the biggest, if I'm being honest, the biggest loss is Willie Tyson, because he dips on you, because that would have been your associate head coach right there, and he's been around the program for so long. It really wouldn't have felt like somebody was leaving.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It would have been like a kind of like a left seat, right seat type of feel. But with him gone, then, and also with Dancy dipping, I'm assuming Coach Ken Evans becomes the associate head coach. But if you have a staffing issue and you already don't have enough coaches on staff, and now you're losing one, and I just think it becomes a headache, man. But I still think that's an opportunity you can't pass up.
I agree. That's what this comment said. He said Valley ain't gonna block that man's opportunity. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
You know what I'm saying? You can't. Yeah, you don't say no to the NFL, especially if that's your aspiration.
It couldn't happen to a better coach. I'm so happy for him, and I'm hoping that turns into a real opportunity. As much as I don't want to see him leave the SWAC, if he gets a job in the NFL, man, there is not a better guy to make that jump.
Absolutely. I mean, there's not a bad word you will ever hear one of his players talk about him. They absolutely love the mindset that Dancy has and what he brings to that team. If knowing Dancy through his players, he probably gave one hell of a speech before he dipped.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? Like, just because I'm gone doesn't change the fact that we come to work every. You know what I'm saying? Like one of those type of inspirational speeches.
Yeah, man, you can already tell. He was so motivated by being voted last, man. Even in Jacksonville, they probably got him on one of those like Zoom scooter things, and he's probably watching practice anyway. With technology moving, at least he could probably still watch film at night. He can talk to his team over Zoom in between, training sessions at Jacksonville.
Absolutely.
So with COVID advancing so many technological, I would say, conference calls and things like that, I still think he's going to be very hands-on with what's going on at Valley, even though we can't be there in person.
That's a good point, Blue. I didn't even think about it like that. He could still be impactful, not even there, because shoot, the whole world had to shut down, and Fortune 500 companies are still running. So exactly. I think a team could suffice for 3 weeks.
Yeah. I think it's 3 weeks or something like that, which, I mean, we'll see how it goes, man, because I feel like with KJ Black getting that opportunity, and I really feel like he's going to do his thing over there in LA. If Dancy gets this opportunity, takes it, and does great things, me and you have talked about this. Coaching trees and connections mean so much. If this fellowship can develop a SWAC or HBCU, even some MEAC coaches getting more opportunities in this fellowship, I think that is great for the SWAC. Even though you're losing some of your top coaching talent, I think it will entice more coaching talent outside of the SWAC and MEAC to come coach in these conferences because of that connection and because of that success.
That is dope. To have a pipeline, because it's no different. If everybody says they want a voice in the room, it could be no better than somebody who was coaching SWAC and MEAC team. You know what I'm saying? That's to have a voice in the room for draft day, have a voice in the room for undrafted free agents. You know what I'm saying? So, when I talked to Coach KJ, he said, LA wanted Marquise Bell really bad. Yeah. But Dallas just dropped the bag. You know what I'm saying? So when you have those guys in those type of rooms, you see more HBCU players get come up the ranks and come through the NFL ranks.
Yeah, and I think
it's no different than what they say. Go ahead.
TC Taylor was selected last year too. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So just more and more opportunities. And talking to Coach KJ Black, he said he's learned so much at his time at the fellowship, and then now his time with LA. He's just a sponge soaking it all up, and being around Sean McVay, 24/7 is a blessing. But I want to say something before I go. I talked to somebody who saw Alabama State's practice, and they said your boy Demetrius Davis was doing a lot of one-hoppers.
Oh, man. I'm sad now. If he comes out and looks
man.
bad, I'm gonna have to delete the whole channel. I've talked him up way too much, man. I'm gonna have to delete the website, the channel, Twitter's gone. Y'all, I'm gonna go off the grid if he's a bust.
Man, I just, the guy was like, maybe it's just, his first day in pass, maybe it was a little rust or whatever, but he said it sure was a lot of one hoppers. He said anything over 15 yards was not a good look.
I'm gonna try to get, so I've been talking to some SWAC FCS programs. My goal is to kind of do like a camp spotlight where I make it up for a day or two and do some film and interviews and kind of highlight the practices, highlight the teams. And Alabama State just moved to the #1 spot in my list. I'm emailing tomorrow and I'm going to try to be out there by Friday. No question.
That's what's up, man. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. But hey, man, Blue, keep doing your thing, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
All right, boy. Peace.
All right, man. We're going to get to these last two callers here. 705, you're live.
What's going on, Blue? This Doc, man.
What's good, man?
I think I got an echo.
Yeah, for some reason it's echoing on the caller's end, but it's not echoing live, man. So you're good to go.
Okay. Hey, so y'all talking about the Southland still trying to get the Texas schools.
Yeah, they kind of put it on hold because I think the schools want to stick around while Coach Prime's here. But if something happens and he leaves or some programs decide to move up to the FBS level, those conversations are going to progress very quickly from what I was told.
Okay, so my whole thing about this is that Prairie View is the long holdover from the original SWAC because it was the 5 church schools in Prairie View. Prairie View basically is written in the state constitution. So basically that's the reason why they get the recognition. But you can't lose that. Like Mr. Kendall said, you can't lose that because you'll lose the Houston market.
That's why I feel like that's why the Southland wants to go so hard for them, because one, you got to look at what happens on my channel, and it's just because like I'm a college football show, is we always look through stuff through like a prism of just football. But when you look at all the things those universities are going to bring outside of the football field, because one, you get the Texas Southern basketball program. That'll be huge for the Southland. That carries a lot of weight, and getting to the tournament will bring a lot of money for Texas Southern and the Southland if that move happens. And on top of that, you get 2 huge recruiting markets. You get 2 huge TV markets, and the Southland commissioner, Chris Grant, he's in his first year. His goal is to make the Southland a bit more diverse, because I think what he's fighting up against in his first year is this perception. And I've never been to a Southland game, and I know the FAMU stuff happened last year where they said the fans.
I've been there.
Yeah, I've heard the fans are not the most welcoming. We'll just say that, and got their problems. But the commissioner,
I would tell you. So I went to SFA for like 2 years when we was in the Southland Conference. Yeah, they was not welcoming of any other team they came to play, especially when it came to football.
Yeah, but
I can see Texas Southern going over there, like you said, for basketball, because they can replace SFA as far as their basketball program goes.
Exactly. That's a big thing, man. And the Southland's been real proactive in fighting that narrative, especially with Chris Grant coming in. I think if I'm not mistaken, y'all don't quote me on this, y'all can look it up and correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he's the first Black commissioner of the Southland, if I'm not mistaken. And so his goal,
you're right.
Yeah, so his goal is to fight against that perception that the conference has like this stigma. And so diversifying the teams and the fan bases is really big for him. And I got to speak to him at Southland Media Day, and man, he was bright-eyed and like had a vision for the Southland. And I don't think he's going to be afraid to step on toes across the country. And the teams that he thinks or deems fits for his conference, he's not gonna hesitate to reach out to those teams and try to make moves happen for his conference.
So it's basically like me. I had Dr. Cavell on my show, and we basically said that the SWAC has always been a mover and shaker conference because you had a lot of schools come in, come out, come in, come out, and then we added schools in, and we kept it the way it was until FAMU and Bethune came in.
Yeah.
So the conference has always been moving and shaking, but with realignment, I don't see how the SWAC will be able to withstand like either somebody coming and poaching the school, or they're gonna have to find some schools to come in to keep the conference as a whole.
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing, and I mean Grant's. I would give Grant a lot of credit for almost saving the Southland, because I think if you go back and watch my show from just a few months ago, I was like, oh man, the Southland's on a deathbed, losing teams left and right. And he brought a lot of those teams back and now has them looking to expand even more. And so I think if I remember right, he even said he's going to put an emphasis on recruiting other FCS teams rather than pulling from D2 again, because they pulled Texas A&M Commerce from D2, who's a really good team, and they have a great program, and I'm really excited to see what they do. But he's going after big-time FCS programs, and it just happens, I think the OVC, ASUN, SWAC, and potentially the WAC, if that falls apart after Sam Houston leaves, I would not be surprised to see Stephen F. Austin and some of those schools hop back into the Southland.
Well, I could say this about SFA. I don't think they want to hop back into the Southland because I feel like they left a bad taste in their mouth.
That's a fact. I will agree with that.
I don't see them hopping back, but I see them moving like forward into another conference or just stay in the WAC.
Yeah, I was more talking about if the WAC doesn't make it, because they lose Sam Houston next year, and I believe they would only have 4 teams after that.
Yeah, because they play the ASUN WAC challenge.
Yeah,
in
I just don't know if that's going to be enough. I mean, Abilene Christian and some of those other schools. I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, man, you have a great show. Everybody, y'all check out my show, HBCU Overdrive with Doc Holliday. Just putting that out there.
Hey, man, guys, go subscribe to my guy, man. Hey, I appreciate the call, man.
All right, bro.
So you got another caller here. 401, you're live.
Hey, what's going on, Blue? How you doing?
What's good, man? How are you?
Doing all right. I just wanted to talk about the MEAC versus SWAC culture for a minute or two.
Yeah, that's fine.
My big thing has always been like, and I think the SWAC would probably be more welcome as well, but I think the MEAC from their standpoint, when it comes to a PWI moving up into that conference, I don't think it'll be an issue at all. Because you got to consider some of the schools that are within that conference. You know, I think the bigger concern is how the Celebration Bowl is going to work if like the University of New Haven wins the MEAC.
That I don't know, or like even if like let's say they add Campbell or Bryant or someone like that, like what is the response going to be to go see Southern play Campbell in Atlanta?
It should be a good game at least.
It would be a great game. I agree. As a FCS guy, love it. But we know the stigma of those types of games, especially neutral site. Is it going to have the same effect as the SWAC versus MEAC? And then also you have the people who consider it the HBCU National Championship. Is that still the case if it's not just HBCUs?
Man, that discussion ends there, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, all hell will break loose at that point. I mean, really and truly.
I mean, I think as long as the conferences get paid, I think the conferences won't care. right?
That's true. Oh no, listen, the programs, conferences will not care, and I think we get that distinction mixed up sometimes. And in terms of the fan perception is not the program, conference, or administration perspective. I think they look at it like, Mr. Campbell says all the times, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. As long as it's making dollars, they're cool with it. Now, the fans, their perception is going to be much, much different in terms of going to the game, supporting it, and how that game is perceived by the masses, in my opinion.
Yeah, but sometimes it's a matter of it's not a problem until it becomes one, right?
Right.
So I don't think nobody's going to talk about it unless the University of New Haven or Campbell wins the MEAC, and then they show up to Atlanta.
But it's, in my opinion, like looking at it, I feel like the Celebration Bowl's gotten lucky because every year, like let's look at the history. There's always been solid brands that have made that game. I mean, can you think of a matchup that has not had one of the top HBCU brands in that game?
Nope, not yet.
Not yet. So what happens when the tides shift, which ultimately they always do in college football, and we get, let's just say, let's say the COVID year wasn't a COVID year, UAPB wins the SWAC. What happens when you get a Delaware State UAPB matchup in the Celebration Bowl? I don't know if the perception of that game is the same as a lot of people like to say it is right now.
Look, man, it's gonna be interesting to see if Tennessee State wins OVC, if A&T wins the Big South, and one of those teams do some damage in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Then what?
That's been my biggest thing because let's just lay it on the table there. North Carolina A&T upsets North Dakota State, wins the Big South. They make a run to the second round or quarterfinals of the playoffs. You got Tennessee State that wins to OVC, makes a run to, let's say, the same round, whatever round you want to say A&T makes it to. And then you got Jackson State, who wins the Celebration Bowl with one loss. Who's the HBCU national champion?
A&T. Because they had the starter out of conference win.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's going to be a debate till the end of time. I mean, everyone's claiming a championship at that point.
Well, they do that every year anyway.
Exactly. And that's why
there were three different national champions this
year. Mr. Cable said that will never happen. That's just like the AAC or the MAC making the playoffs.
That was hilarious.
Leave the MAC alone, Mr. Campbell. They're doing their best up there in the Northeast or the Midwest. My bad. I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. But I mean, so other than Campbell, I mean, because you kind of know about the MEAC landscape. Other than Campbell, what PWI do you think would be a fit for that conference?
I mean, I think if you're going to raid somebody, it would be the Big South. But the problem is, I just don't see any of them having an interest. In my opinion, I think Campbell will try to go to CAA or a different conference.
I agree.
Or maybe if if A&T was still in the MEAC, but then again, UNCG would move. A lot of schools would. I think they're going to have to grab a school from D2 to come up. And I think it won't be a long-term thing. It'll be, we're going to show up to get the build, and then once they build, they're going to leave.
Someone suggested VMI. That would be interesting. A military institute joining the MEAC. Potentially.
They got some military folk running some of them schools, so it would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, it could be there. I know they're in the SoCon right now, and the SoCon's done a good job of not losing anybody unless it's the FBS. And then he mentioned Bryant. Bryant potentially, I think maybe because Bryant fits geographically.
I live
with
up here.
The northern teams.
I know where Bryant is. I live in Rhode Island. I know where Bryant is, man. That's a haul. You want to talk about folks complaining about travel. I think South Carolina State will lead the conference if that happens.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. The travel cost.
That's true. That's the problem, man.
As a full member?
Yeah.
Yeah, nah.
Because, you would have Bryant there. I'm trying to think. Charleston Southern, Robert Morris, potentially with I don't know. Like my problem is okay, and I've said this, and just to be consistent, um, I've always said don't add teams just to add teams. You have to add
Yep.
teams with value, and I don't see the value in the MEAC adding a Charleston Southern or Robert Morris or someone like that.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think they need to find a school within their area. Like I think going to New Haven is excessive too. I mean, you're talking for South Carolina, that's a 12-hour hike
Yeah.
to get to Connecticut, to New Haven, Connecticut. So
Mr.
like
Campbell
that.
said anyone
But
but
they
the
need to add
Citadel.
some teams, man, because I don't think Howard leaving is over.
No. If I had to make a prediction, Howard is going to leave the MEAC within the next 2 to 3 years.
Once Dr. Frederick retires, the move happen.
Because I think the CAA is going to go after 2, maybe 3 more teams because they want to have that almost like the FCS Super Conference pretty much. And I think Campbell and Howard are the next 2 teams that they're going to want to grab because I don't think they're going to pull South Carolina State, and I think they know that. And I think Norfolk is another team that you have to look at because it fits the market that they lost when they lost James Madison.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, I know that Dr. Frederick is retiring, but my point is he didn't want to leave the MEAC on his way out the door. He don't want that to be part of his legacy. So they're gonna replace him, and then the new guys are gonna make the move.
And then on top
But,
of that, in terms of MEAC talk, I still think the NEC is going to make a strong push for Delaware State and Morgan, especially with being that first step that they're already playing multiple sports in that conference.
Well, South Carolina State's been playing teams in the Southern and SoCon for years.
Yeah.
So so if Howard would have made the move to go to the CAA, most of the folks had a landing spot.
You know,
So
I think it would have been a fight, really and truly, between the OVC and the SoCon for South Carolina State, possibly the ASUN. But I think the OVC would have their pitch to South Carolina State would have been, we have an HBCU already. We would like to add another. We want to try to, rebuild our conference, make it more stable, and adding you would, and they'll pitch, their bullet points on what South Carolina State would add. I think the OVC would make a really, really, really strong run at South Carolina State, but because the SoCon drags their feet so much in terms of expansion and things like that, I don't know if they would take the risk of expansion because they typically don't expand unless they lose somebody.
yeah, that's true.
Like
somebody asked about Coppin State and UMass, but I could see Coppin State getting an invite to the AC.
Yeah, because I know Bowie State already said they're not moving up. Yeah, I don't see why Bowie would move up, to be honest.
No, I don't think a D2 HBCU is serious about moving up right now.
I think there's too much uncertainty.
I don't see it happening.
It's the same thing as why a lot of FCS teams potentially could not want to move up, because there's so much instability across the FCS because of the instability of FBS. Like there's like this whole trickle down effect that I don't know if any D2s want to take that risk, because they saw what happened to Kentucky State in the MEAC and Savannah State.
No, Savannah State.
Yeah, Savannah State. That's right. Yeah.
Winston.
So do you want to take that risk right now in this year of, or this time of instability?
Yeah, I just think everybody is saying, oh, well, we just need to get a D2 school, HBCU up, but I don't think a lot of them are interested in going. And a lot of them don't want to leave the conference they're in because they're well ran.
Yeah, and I know, so one of the comments, Tuskegee already said it was their goal to move up. I don't know what the timeline on that is, though, because I feel like some of these conferences want it to happen sooner rather than later, and you can't rush a move. from division to division. Like this has to be something you got to be planning. So I just don't know what the timeline on Tuskegee is to move up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would be great for the SWAC though, if they can get Tuskegee in the conference.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that, man.
Rivalries.
Well, apparently we got someone from Tuskegee in here. He said, "You give us 65 scholarships, we've taken over the FCS." Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
And they don't have to have night games. A lot of schools don't. A lot of schools just recently had their first night game, so that's not a big deal. People bring that up. That's not a big deal.
You know, that's one thing that got me last year. With Jackson State, man. Could you like the fact that Jackson don't have night games at home, man? That's tough. It's because they didn't have a home night game last year, did they? Other than the SWAC championship.
Yeah, man. It'll be interesting to watch how this unfolds, but I mean, the committee will be done at the end of the month, right?
Yeah, I believe it's coming up.
Committee, so we'll know what it's gonna be very soon.
Hey, man, I appreciate your call, man.
No question, Blue. Keep doing what you're doing, my man.
Later, man. 404. You just hung up. Call back in 404. Whoever that is, that you'll be my last caller, and we'll wrap this up, man. This went way longer than I expected, man. But I appreciate y'all calling in and commenting. So you might have to have night games for TV. Yeah, that's true. Because really and truly, the TV networks determine the times of the game. I don't know how that works with ESPN Plus though. ESPN Plus, I'm not sure, man. Back in the day, JSU only had 7 p.m. starts. Man, listen, I'm biased. Listen, there's a few things I'm biased about. One is I hate neutral site games. I cannot stand neutral site games. And two, there is nothing better than a night game, man. Night games on college campuses are gold, man. If Auburn or whatever team I'm watching can play every game at night, sign me up, man. Sign me up. Yeah, Michigan did just get lights. Michigan played their first night game with like Denard Robinson. It was like in 2011 or something like that. It was against Notre Dame, I believe. It was like the first night game in the Big House, which is insane that they just got lights at that stadium. North Carolina Central will try to follow wherever Norfolk goes to. I agree. Yeah, man, night games hit different pairs. Listen, I remember when I was a student, night games were like gold, man. Like all the big games. Like that's why I hate the SEC's TV network. As a fan and as a student, I hated our games having to kick off at 3:30 or 2:30, whatever it was, because of the CBS, depending on the time zone. I hated that, man. I wanted our games to kick off 6, 7 o'clock at night, man. I remember one year I was a student, the LSU game kicked off at like 8 p.m., man. It was amazing. That was one of the most fun experiences, man, I had as a student. Jackson tries to have their games over before they you are wild, man. 404, man. I'm gonna give you like 2 more minutes to call in if you want to call back in, and I'll get your call. But if not, we're gonna wrap this up. The Southern game was at night, but that was on the road, Michael. I'm talking about a home game in the vet at night. I think in the SWAC championship started during the day and then it ended at night. So I would like to see it, kick off at like 6:30, especially like the boombox and the vet kicking that thing off at like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night would be amazing, man. Hey man, I appreciate you, Russell. We had to get a little bit of MEAC talk. Yes, man. Listen, the Big 12 and the Big 10 screwed up that TV deal, man. 11 a.m. kickoffs. You can miss me with that 100% of the time, man. 11 a.m. kickoffs are the death of students, man, because students have to get there so early and you want to tailgate before you can't. You got to wake up at like 5:30 to get everything ready, man. 11 a.m. kickoffs, I cannot stand. Let's see, Aggie Eagle Classic for Dukes Bay is going to be at 7:30. I'm excited for that game, man. I really do think that was one of the other games I was looking at going to week 1, but I really wanted to get to Lorman and go to that Stephen F. Austin game. Let's see, should the Alabama school go to the Sun Belt Conference? Chris, no. I'm just going to say no. The Sun Belt is I don't see either of those schools going anytime soon. And I would be surprised if UAPB wanted to add more Alabama schools to that conference on top of what's already there. So I'm going to say probably not. But if they do move up, we'll see if they get an invite. But that was way, way down the line for either Alabama school to move up to at least the Sun Belt, man. That conference is really, really stout in terms of talent. Best games in Bragg Stadium were always at night. I'm telling you, there's not a fan out there who could say their stadium is better in the day. There's not a chance. Blue, do you think the NCAA will come down hard on Norfolk State if they lose the class action lawsuit? Potentially. So, Chris, I personally, I don't know of a situation that rivals it. I don't think. Listen, y'all can correct me. Listen, I'm more on the field, but off the field, I don't remember any other school getting in that type of trouble in terms of sexual harassment, hazing type things like that. But I would imagine the penalty will not be light, Chris, but I can't really make a prediction on what it will be, but I would imagine they are going to get a pretty steep punishment if that comes to fruition, in my opinion. She says, Brian, I agree. I agree. Dion don't like night games. That's his bedtime. Would you like to see Valdosta State in West Florida? Yes. I think you can. I think if you go back and watch some of my earlier shows, Aaron, I said Valdosta State and Florida and West Florida are two teams that I would like to see move up. But the problem is, I don't know if either of those programs have the I would say resources and financial backing and infrastructure to make that move yet. West Florida is probably more likely than Valdosta, but I don't even think Valdosta has their own stadium, if I'm not mistaken. I know Leon. Probably, if he's still in the chat, went to Valdosta, I believe, and he could probably answer that more. But from what I know, I don't think Valdosta has the infrastructure right now, Aaron. But West Florida is on that movement to move up. South Carolina State and North Carolina tees at 7:00. Okay, that's gonna be such a good game too, man. There's so many games I want to get to this year. Hell, the only game during the day might have been homecoming. I remember they played Grambling at 82 or 83 during the game. That was a crazy game. Hey, man. So 404 didn't call back. Listen, you can catch me on the next call-in show, 404, if you want to call back in on another show, man. But listen, I appreciate y'all tuning in, man. Listen, 2 hours and 40 minutes tonight for a live stream. And check out our website, thebluebloodspod.com, for all our recruiting content. All freshman team coming soon, like I mentioned earlier. Make sure to share the stream, hit the like button on your way out. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And we're trying to make it to 4K before the season starts, man. We're about 200 subscribers away from that. But guys, I'll make sure, I promise. I know I told y'all that last time, and we're going to make these live streams more common during the season. And we're going to probably be doing 2-3 live streams a week, traveling for the season, man. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. You're not going to want to miss it, man. Y'all have a great night, and I will be back next time, man.